Good afternoon. The February 11th, 2025 work session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Dr. Rendell, can you address the board with, or wait, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's get ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Rendell, can you address the board with the items on the agenda for today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 4 different topics we're going to cover in this afternoon's work session. The first is we're going to take a look at our current strategic plan. Then we're going to look at some student performance data for PM2. We're going to compare our results this year with last year. Then we're going to have a presentation on the project for the separate day school. And then finally, we'll dive into some policy review, which everybody I'm sure is excited about. All right. But the first presentation is we're going to take a little look, a deeper dive into the strategic plan. So we recently revised our 5-year strategic plan. So we're launching a new 5-year strategic plan. And the strategic plan is supposed to be kind of our guiding document, kind of our roadmap, our plan about how we're going to go about doing our work. And sometimes when organizations create a strategic plan, it's more like a notebook that goes on a shelf. And it's not really revisited until the 5 years later when it's supposed to be done, kind of thing. And we don't want that. We want the strategic plan to be kind of a living, breathing document. It guides our work, but it's also supposed to be really about what we do. Like the plan itself is supposed to be about what we do and what we're supposed to be about. So we want to make sure everybody stays acquainted with the plan, not just when we create the plan. So we're going to take some time at each of the next 4 months to take a dive into one of the 4 goal areas. There are 4 goal areas in the strategic plan. So we're going to share that information with you in the workshop, but we're also sharing it with our leadership team each month as well. We want to make sure that everybody sees the different components of the strategic plan, but also sees their role in it and how they can contribute to the success of the district by working through the strategic plan. So today we're going to look at goal area 1, which is academic excellence. Everybody knows that the goal of the school district is to educate and care for the children in our community, so academic excellence should be probably the first goal. But we're going to dive kind of deep into that and see what that looks like. And one of the things I want everybody to pay attention to, not just the board members, but any members of the viewing public, are the goals that we've established to measure our progress in each of the goal areas. These objectives and goals are pretty ambitious, but they're also things we should be striving for. So Cynthia Rayan is going to lead us through our discussions of the strategic plan goal areas each time when we meet for this. And Cynthia is really kind of the godmother of the strategic plan, or the driving force behind the strategic plan, especially when she's asking different departments to complete their sections of the strategic plan work. So she deserves a lot of credit for this incredible plan. Everybody had a piece in it, no doubt, but Cynthia definitely has been the driving force. So we really appreciate all the hard work that she's done. So I'm going to turn it over to her. And then as we go through the sections today of goal area 1, some different people are going to be presenting. But I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia now.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell. And thank you, board chair and board members. I'm glad to be back at the table for the chance to dive into the details of our 2025-2030 strategic plan, grounded in learning, aiming for the stars. As Dr. Rendell said, as part of our ongoing efforts to achieve the objectives outlined in our new 5-year plan, we'll be diving deeper into each of the 4 goals in the upcoming months during some board meetings and during some leadership team meetings. While we provided you with a high-level overview of our goals during the January strategic plan meeting, this review process will give each goal team the opportunity to present their individual objectives, the strategies in place to achieve them, and how they plan to measure progress with performance indicators and metrics. These meetings are vital as they allow the district team, the board, and school principals to align on the details of each goal, understand the action plans, and ensure we remain accountable and on track toward achieving our shared vision and long-term objectives. As you may remember, our new 5-year plan focuses on 4 goals to ensure student success: academic excellence, exceptional workforce, community connection, and operational efficiency. Achieving these goals requires collaboration at every level of our district, from strengthening early literacy to enhancing middle and high school opportunities and building an exceptional workforce. We're committed to continuous improvement. Our operational decisions, whether improving classrooms, advancing technology, or ensuring safe student transportation, are all aimed at supporting student success. At today's work session, we'll focus on academic excellence to provide every student with a learning experience that empowers them to improve academic skills and prepare for post-secondary success. The goal of academic excellence is supported by 5 key objectives. So we're going to move right into objective 1. I'll hand it over to Ms. Harris and Mr. Reamer and their team, who will explain the why and how behind their efforts in objectives 1, 2, and 3, followed by Ms. Dampier and team, who will explain the why and how behind objective 4. And finally, Mr. Reamer will wrap up with an explanation on objective 5. So, Ms. Harris?
So can you hear me? Okay. As you see in front of us, our main objective here is that all of our schools in Brevard will be an A or a B. So that is, as Dr. Rendell mentioned, we've set some ambitious goals, but we very much believe that we have all the right pieces. We just need to put the puzzle, and that is attainable. In order to do that, we have to increase student proficiency, and in doing that, we want to continue to work under strategy number 1. You will see the focus on the instructional experience for students, and we believe that we can improve student outcomes by providing professional development that is grounded in the state benchmarks, and that students have utilization and instruction with aligned instructional resources. So that would be in all instructional areas: reading, math, science, and social studies, considering our core content areas. And so strategy number 1 is to ensure all students have access to aligned instructional materials, and that teachers appropriately know how to utilize them in order to teach the state benchmarks. Something I like to remind everyone, anyone in the audience, is you can have the best instructional materials that are aligned to state benchmarks, but it's how do we leverage them? Are we appropriately utilizing them? And then additionally, it is not the curriculum that is the game changer for students. That's a piece of the puzzle, but we really want to enhance on that our curriculum and what we teach are those state adopted benchmarks. So we have the resources. So the perfect puzzle is preparing teachers for appropriate use, making sure that our student tasks are aligned to those benchmarks, and that combination will improve student outcomes. And so we know that if our ELA, science, and social studies all improve, that will directly assist us in improving our percentage of points towards school grade of all being an A or a B. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Raymer for strategy 2.
So strategy 2 is based on the cohort graduation rate for each of our high schools, with the goal of 95% or more as the graduation rate whenever we compile those schools all together. So currently we are working through a systems manual identifying best practices for schools to follow when tracking their cohort, to ensure that all students are given every opportunity to be successful within their school and then to graduate. I have impressed upon our principals and the school leadership directors how important the diploma is as the gateway to students' post-secondary success, and allow them to open doors for their passion and their purpose as they exit our doors and then go into that next stage of post-secondary life. So Lena Weibelt is Director in School Leadership that is overseeing this process, and we've been working with principals for roughly 6 to 8 months now on this conversation as we went through last year and then into this year. Currently, our graduation rate is 90% as a district. When you look at our BPS schools that are the 16 schools that we track outside of charter, it's 91 to 92%. So we are continuing to expand our discussions to some of our charter schools to make sure that they have the right strategies or the strategies that we're putting in place in order to track and monitor students in their cohort and the graduation rate, once again, with the goal of 95% being the average graduation rate across BPS.
And now we move to our third strategy, and this is very much a collaboration cross departments here at the district level. And this is our datacom. So in speaking to principals, this has been a newer experience for our schools, but we just came off of, in January, meeting with each principal, Dr. Rendell and the three of us, as well as our teams, really diving into data school by school and having principals present what is your plan. And so doing this twice a year, we did it at the beginning of the year with each school leader, and that's where, you know, they looked at their PM1 data, beginning of the year, all of their data set, and then made decisions and planning. We did it again in January after PM2 to say, okay, now what? So you have now 2 data sets. The purpose of FAST was to make instructional decisions. And so in January, principals came in and described, you know, here is my plan utilizing data to impact the student experience on PM3. The outcome metric, we hope to start aligning all the pieces of the puzzle. So we hope to start aligning the school improvement plans, which each school does, with the everyday practice on the campus with our strategic plan, because then we're paddling in the same direction, and that will make clarity for all of the adults, but also clarity for the students. Here's the focus, here's what we're working on at the classroom level, but then at the school level and here at ESF, that we're all speaking the same language. We know what our goals are and how we plan to get there. And so you will see the metric is connected to that school improvement plan. We don't want schools to think I'm writing a school improvement plan to go on the shelf, but very much I'm writing it so that we can meet the goals that the district has set and that we all play a piece in that. And so really connecting the effectiveness of the datacom process with principals based on that school improvement plan and how we're paddling together.
Mr. Chairman, can I stop to ask a question real fast? Absolutely. I just have a couple questions. So as you're going through these meetings and you're meeting with the principals, it sounds like twice a year, is there an end of the year meeting that's going to take place as well?
We would hope that perhaps by invitation, some schools will come in perhaps right before that PM3, because we have our school leadership directors that serve as principal supervisors, so they're boots on the ground collecting information through their walkthroughs. And then our CNI team are in schools as well. And so we have a pulse on who needs more support. So if we have, by invitation only, as we've talked about, having schools of concern come in and share, okay, here's where we're at, and here's, you know, a couple weeks before that PM3, do we need to modify anything?
And is this information going to be presented to the board at the end of the year, possibly just so that we can track this as well?
We will be, all of the metrics, we will be updating. Ms. Rayan has a very sophisticated smart sheet that we have all become very in tune with, and so we will be able to share those performance metrics to include the increase of schools meeting their school improvement plan goals.
Okay, for me as a board member, I'm just asking this personally, but I would like to see the PM1, PM2 data that you guys are seeing, just so that we can track it as well. And then possibly even considering bringing in, you know, the principals are a part of this, the teachers are a huge part of this too, right? So figuring out where is the breakdown coming and how can we continually improve this, I think is very important. So I would love to see that data. I don't know if the whole entire board wants to see it, but I would love to. So if I could meet with you one-on-one
Are
about
you talking
that.
about besides, because we do get the data presentations?
I'm
We've
talking
had-
about the data specific to each school
To the
and
school.
each, yeah, I mean, really kind of honing in on each school, where they're at, what the improvement is or not, and what is the plan. I would like to see that just so that we know.
So all schools, when we talk about end of the year, all schools around that time, once we get PM3 data, then it's time for the Ascend conference, and we're doing that again. It's time to build the improvement plan. So that's kind of in place of, except for the ones that have the invitation, that Datacom meeting, right? Because then they're analyzing to build the plan for the next year, right?
Correct. And to your point, is part of that Ascend experience includes reflecting on the previous year. What goals
Right.
did we meet? What did we not meet? And why? So that we can create the plan moving forward.
Okay, good.
Okay, any additional questions on objective 1? Okay, let's move on to A2.
Okay, so within the strategies under A2, you will see this is all about increasing acceleration opportunities for students in our middle and high schools. And so strategy 1 that you will see, this is heavily grounded in ensuring that students are in the appropriate courses utilizing data. So I want to be clear that this doesn't mean that every student goes into every acceleration course. What this is utilizing data so that we are ensuring all students have access. And when you look at this strategy, you will see everything from our Algebra 1 to dual enrollment opportunities, IB. We have a lot of acceleration opportunities to include CTE courses. And so it's really creating a system at the school level to ensure that all students have an acceleration opportunity within all of those opportunities. This is not saying a student needs to be in all of those opportunities, but making sure that we are doing strategic scheduling to ensure if a student has not had an opportunity for acceleration, that we are providing that opportunity for students. I can tell you this is working not only with school leadership, but we're working with CTE, Ms. Vega, and Ms. Rutledge. We're working closely together to ensure that we're having as many opportunities for students to meet this. Not only to consider that component of school grade that it speaks to college and career acceleration, but also to ensure if a student has a pathway for post-secondary success, be it college or career, that we are providing them that pathway that's going to gear towards the student's desired outcome post-secondary. For number 2, this is something that we continue to work on, is knowing that our students in 6th grade, and I know we've had this conversation with the board before, because we have 6th grade at our elementary schools, that advanced course and those acceleration benchmarks are not embedded into our 6th grade math. And so really creating opportunities for the pathway, should a student be enrolled in 7th grade algebra, that we provide an experience for them between 6th and 7th grade. Last year was our first year doing it. We utilized Edgenuity. Our team continues to look at what the best platform is to provide that for students, to ensure that if a student is taking it in 7th grade, that we're not putting them in that 7th grade course knowing that they have not mastered the prerequisite standards. This also begins the conversation of all students do not need to be in algebra in the 7th grade. Sometimes, for our stakeholders out there, it's important that we make decisions on the data of your child and that it's not a one-size-fits-all. Oftentimes, students or families are concerned, if I don't take algebra in 7th grade, I'm behind, or that I can't get the advanced math coursework in place before I graduate. And so we want to just educate and open doors of the different ways for 7th grade or Algebra 1 readiness or success. If you look at number 3, this speaks to really making sure that our students that are, or teachers that are instructing in our CTE courses have had a lot of professional development in what that industry cert will require at the end. That is something that our students are in a course, and we want to ensure that the content they are receiving within that course, that teachers feel prepared for appropriate instruction to maximize the pass rates for students. And again, we want to grow our teachers so that we can change student outcomes. When we look at number 4, this is Dr. Mayer, as you know, runs our school choice department, and we want BPS to be the preferred choice. And what we have found is a lot of data that when for students that are exercising their opportunity at choice, their graduation rates are elevated and their performance is elevated. And we want to make sure that we continue to communicate the opportunities for choice, that you can do it by course or a program or the location. And this is how we're going to measure are we continuing to grow choice opportunities?
Mr. Chair? Just want to interrupt you because I have two questions. One is regarding S1. Could you maybe elaborate on how, or if we are coordinating, collaborating with industry to make sure that the classes that we're offering in CTE are in alignment with what the community needs?
Yes, I will be happy to elaborate on that, and we'll go into a deeper dive in I believe, the very next work session. But just kind of at a surface level, when Ms. Rutledge, if we're creating a program or looking to enhance, there are ongoing industry partners. The best example I can give you is I sat in a meeting where we had Mr. Johnson, one of our content specialists. He brought in the service industry for auto repair centers. A lot of them were from dealerships with our auto teachers. And one evening we got in the room together, and basically the industry was able to say, here's what we need and here's what we don't need. And it wasn't always like, here's what we need, but here's what our departments are required training of the students when we hire them. So it was kind of a nice thing for the CTE content specialists and the teachers to hear, you're busy prepping them with these skills, but we will train them on that. Here's what we need them to come in knowing. And so that relationship between the private industry at the car dealership service centers, their managers, and our teachers, it was great dialogue to say, here's how we can refine instruction. And I know that's just one example of one CTE program, but we have that in all of our CTE programs. We have industry partners that basically help inform us as far as here's what the program needs to do for students, but also at the level of industry certifications. Here's what will help me if students come out with this. We don't want to be spinning our wheels in this area that's really not what the workforce needs. And so that auto example is my best example of how we utilize the industry partners in that.
And just a suggestion on that, if we could collaborate with EDC and see what, get their input as well moving forward, because they're the ones talking to the companies that are coming to the area as well, and gives us a little projection on what might be needed in the future. And then just on S3, the part about getting, I know it's mainly for middle school, I believe, but it was, I'm just curious, is there any kind of talk about how to give credit, for instance, for 3 years of, I know it's a little sidebar, but is there a chance of somebody getting credit, a student getting credit for taking an electronics class for 3 years, for instance, getting a year off of their licensing credit for a local electric school, or being able to CLEP at the end to be able to walk in, so they're not just getting a piece of paper that says they took the class, they're actually getting it just like you would get college credit going to college while you're in high school. Maybe you could use these classes to eliminate some of the high school or some of the licensing requirements.
We absolutely do that currently, and we're continuing to grow in that. I know Ms. Rutledge, I think, is back there. But so when we will go into deeper by program of what that looks like, but an example that we were just talking about is in our fire academy. Students leave that and they have already, Eastern Florida will accept that as the first course done. And so they come in with something already in their toolbox towards their program
Great.
at Eastern Florida.
Thank you.
John, I'm sorry. May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Because I think you're in line with something. And let me just clarify. You're asking that if, along with the curriculum that we have, if we may be able to make it in line with some of the local certifications that some of them have, so that when they graduate, so they might take 3 years, but they also during that 3 years can get a certification for electrical or something else during that time. Is that kind of what you were trying to say?
Correct, or if it's a 4-year course, when they walk out, they have a year of it already taken off. They got credit for what they did in high school.
And what you were saying is it's linked up with that for Fire Academy. I think where he's talking a lot is in our construction schools. They go through each one of those levels, and there may be an opportunity to have them qualified ahead of time for OSHA. So years ago when we did the bricks project with the home builders and contractors, one of the classes that we taught them was, we taught all the kids was OSHA. Get them their OSHA certs now. And I know that that's part of what we do inside those classes, but that would be where I think you're going.
It's
Is that
one thing,
correct?
yes.
I just wanted to kind of go back through it because I think some of the board members would agree with what you were saying. I don't
No,
know if it came
I
on.
appreciate your clarification.
Yeah.
But-
Is that good? I think you guys knew what we were talking
down.
about, but
Yep.
we didn't. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there's no more questions for objective A2, we'll move on to objective A3.
So Objective A3 is what we lovingly call the Mighty Moves Initiative. I think that this is something that we've had conversation a long time. We cannot continue to write strategic plan outcomes beginning in third grade. And so really, what's happening VPK to prepare students for entry at third grade on grade level. And so the strategies you will see here, and this is, yes, the plan is coming, and it will go through 2030, but this, as you know, began this school year where all of the professional development is grounded in that science of reading. We've talked a lot, I know, even at board work sessions, about the importance of those foundational skills. And so this professional development will continue on each year as we onboard teachers, that they will have all of their instructions so they can deliver a 90-minute block, VPK, all the way through third grade that is grounded in that science of reading. And so you will see this is one of our most aggressive goals, because you will see that annually we're looking for an 8% increase. That is significant. I just think it's extremely important that we set that at 8%. If we are trying to change the district's ranking and we are trying to change preparedness for third grade, we have to move at a very rapid rate. So that is a significant increase each year, but I feel like we are already seeing some momentum in our primary grades that we'll continue to build on. We are getting ready to kick off for VPK next year. We have the Mighty Moves in place, but they're going to have their own name. I'm not going to share it yet because it's going to be a big surprise and roll out like Mighty Moves. But I feel like we're really putting the supports where they're needed prior to that third grade, instead of always waiting for the third grade issue and trying to respond reactively. And then strategy number 2, I know this is something that we're working side by side with school leadership, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but this is where we're going to plan resources for quality tier 1. Anita Archer says you cannot intervene out of bad core, and what she means by that is if your core instruction has holes, you can do all this intervention, but you really need to fix the issue. And so we're going to plan quality tier 1 instruction. And then do you want to speak to the metric on that?
Yeah, so we have our school leadership directors that are visiting schools at least once, if not twice monthly, and visiting classrooms. And part of every walk that they have on a campus is classroom instructional walks. And as they're doing classroom instructional walks, they're taking stock of the strategies being used in the classroom, small group initiatives that are being utilized by the teachers, and what other resources are being utilized within each of the classrooms that they visit at that due time when they're on the campus. So we come together every Friday and break down some of that information as we have our weekly meeting and talk about what we're seeing inside of the classrooms and how we can get to 100% teacher implementation with the aligned instruction, and also using some of that small group opportunity for students on a daily basis.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? When you guys do the classroom walks, are you picking the classrooms, or is the principal picking the classrooms that you're walking?
So it's a combination. Typically, the principal will have the opportunity to take us some classrooms that they're looking for us to go visit, and then we would ask to go see, let's go see third grade, and we'd walk through all the third grade classrooms. We have several schools doing a mock BSI right now, where we go into the school, we do instructional walks. It's a larger team, and go and walk the campus, and then go through all fifth grade classrooms or all sixth grade classrooms, whatever classroom that may be. Obviously, data will help drive which classrooms we may go into. If we're seeing that there's some data points that really need addressed in certain grade levels, then the directors will identify that during this visit, we're going to go visit each of your 4 fourth grade classrooms, and we're going to stay in there for 15, 20 minutes to see a change, to see if there's small group, to see what type of strategies are being used. So it's a combination. Usually as the year starts, it's more led by the principal. And then as we get into schools more often, it's starting to be led by data and the director.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, we'll move on now to objective A4.
Good afternoon. Objective 4 really is looking at the whole child when we think of the student, if they're not in for attendance, if their behavioral and emotional state is not solid, or they're having behavior problems, then we know that a student cannot adequately learn. So the goal here for our team is to provide supports to enhance and make sure that our students are receiving these resources. Our performance indicator, we really wanted to focus on making sure that our students are in attendance, because when they're in the seats, we know that's half the battle, but then keeping them in the seats to learn. So our goal is to increase the attendance rate from 95 to 97% by the end of 2030. And with that, our first strategy is we're looking at all of our populations that we're responsible for. Mrs. Harris, of course, is responsible for the general ed setting, but our students are in those general ed settings as well. So we want to make sure that the supports are in there to ensure that they are getting what they need. One of the things that we've done this year is that we're tracking a resource that we particularly use for our ELL students, our English language learner students, inside the classroom, what they should be doing, and to really to get immersed in the language. And then really once they get immersed, then they can actually go to the next stage of our curriculums for some of our students. So we're monitoring the usage of that resource, and we put that in our LTP once a month to make sure supports are in place if they're not using it, and if we need to provide professional development inside the classroom as well as outside of the classroom utilizing this resource, that is available. So that goal is to increase our ELL access from 20.7% to 25.7% by the end of 2030. And that is led by Dr. Baez. Strategy number 2, of course, is to deliver professional development and to ensure our students our staff are equipped with supports needed for mental health and well-being. We really focused a lot on making sure that all of our staff have been trained in the youth mental health training. Last year, we were at 91%, and every year, at the end of the year, we sign, and Dr. Rendell sends it up to the state. The goal is 80% for the state, but we were at 91%, and our goal is 100% by the end of 2030. And so that's a lot of training and tracking to make sure all of our staff that are responsible for being trained to make sure that they know the symptoms and they can problem solve and provide supports or get them the right supports are in place to ensure that we meet that goal. And that's led by Dr. Jenkins. She's done a lot with youth mental health as well as with threats. So they go hand in hand. We're just making sure those resources are there for our students. Strategy number 3 is to identify and address bullying and harassment in our schools. And we pretty much did an overhaul last year, and that work was led by Mrs. Kassenschmidt, and we're continuing to refine our practices and provide professional development and resources to make sure that what we're doing is effective. And you will notice with a lot of the strategies, we're doing monthly progress monitoring to make sure that things are in place, whether the resource is being used, whether or not our students are being successful and they know what some of our bullying practices are. We're monitoring that data to make informed decisions. And we're also making sure that our stakeholders, which could be our teachers or our administrators, we're getting feedback on that to find out what training, additional training that they need, and how can we support them also in the classroom. Strategy number 4, strengthen the district's processes for initial ESE evaluations to ensure timely compliance. This was something we've been doing, and this work is led by Dr. Fontan. We were doing it last year, but this year we are really honing in and actually sending the reports and talking about who's out of compliance and what supports can we put in place and problem solve with you to make sure that we're in compliance with these students getting the resources. Because if we're out of compliance, that means our students are not getting the supports and services that they need. So we're constantly monitoring this on a monthly basis to make sure that those supports are in place for our students and that we're adhering to the timeline. And these are state timelines. So we want to make sure that we're in compliance with that. So we're monitoring that on a monthly basis and working with schools. And we're also working with Mr. Ringer's team and supporting that compliance as well. Strategy number 5 is to expand the number of qualified PBS mentors in schools to support student success and development. And this work is being led by Mr. Poole. We know that if students get that additional resource, whether it's an adult or a student, I'm really challenging him to get some student mentors, because I was one myself when I was in high school, that can go out and really support our students inside the classrooms. And then we're also working with our community members to enhance and increase the number of mentors that we have in our schools, because we know all the support, if the kids can get that one-on-one support or small group support, that it's going to enhance their knowledge and it's going to help them academically and behaviorally.
Mr. Chair? Just on that one, on the mentors,
Mm-hmm.
could you elaborate a little bit on what your strategy you're using to be able to attract mentors, or what you plan to do?
We've already, we're putting together a flyer. Mr. Poole is putting together a flyer. We're also working with GCR, because we want to make sure that we get the word out there, especially for our students, because we haven't tapped into that. And so that's one of the main things. If we can get with our school counselors, our social workers, our administrators, and really promote that in our secondary schools, so they can find out those opportunities that are available, because we've not tapped into that. We mainly just did the adults. But it's good for those finding the window of opportunity, whether it's before school or after school, to go in and support. So I know he's working with our BIPOC to find opportunities for the community to be involved in that work as well. But we've just started to lay that out.
Thank you.
So that number, the 228, I don't even know, my microphone's on today. Does that include our Take Stock in Children mentors, or is that just people who are mentoring outside of that formal program? Do you know?
No, those are qualified as our public school mentors, not to include Take Stock in Children or our qualified discipline volunteers.
Okay. So we could have more than that, just not necessarily documented, because I know, that's a number we can get a hold of. Not only how many mentors, but how many kids are already being impacted. And I think students have to meet a certain qualification for that particular program. But I mean, getting involved in that myself over the last couple of years, that's something we want to get all the avenues open for people. And I know they're always looking for mentors too. And that's more of a long-term relationship. When you get assigned to a student, you're assigned to them for 3, 4, 5 years, even just to build those long-term relationships. But let's put all of our opportunities, I feel like, in the basket for people to choose from. And thank you for continuing this, because this was something that I pushed early on in the time of the board. I know we had a website launch that here's some mentor training and here's some opportunities, but it was kind of up to the schools of how to use them, and kind of coordinating it together is really important to give schools a blueprint for here's how it's working well, especially if a school is already doing it well. I think Hoover was one of the schools that utilized it really well a few years ago. So bravo. But I would just add that if we can like include all of our opportunities.
Absolutely, really promoting this, that, students can earn Bright Future points. I did it when I was
Yeah.
in school, to make sure that, you're making that connection. We've also expanded that, we do peers as partners for our ESC students. For our general ed students going into our ESC classrooms, those are opportunities where they go in and work with those students. And it's really, you get a lot more out of it than you think.
Yes.
And so we're really starting to map that out and what that looks like.
Yes. And there's a plug for people to go get fingerprinted.
Yep.
And go be ready to go have that out of the way, so that barrier's out of the way for you to become a mentor for the people who are listening.
Okay. And then the last one is to address the chronic absenteeism through targeted interventions to improve school attendance. And that is huge. This year is the first year. I know last year we didn't monitor it and send reports. I know the schools were doing it, but this year we send out twice 9 weeks a report for the schools with all their average daily attendance as well as their chronic absenteeism. And when we see percentages that we are concerned about. Not that we're not concerned about every student, we have supports, but we go out and problem solve as a team what strategies and supports we can put in place to help, whether it means a social worker goes to make a home visit. We want to be preventative instead of reacting, at the end. So I'm working with my team and we're revamping some of the things pertaining to attendance for next year.
Okay, any more questions on objective A4? If not, we'll move on with our last objective, 5, A5.
I just have a real
Oh,
quick
I'm
comment
so
because we
sorry.
moved on before I got a chance to. I just wanted to commend you, Ms. Harris, and your team because I know that's one of my huge priorities, just, my limited knowledge. As I've learned, that's just a huge need to increase reading proficiency. And it's one of my main focuses for my term here. And that's being that aggressive. I know it's a passion of yours and just want to verbally, publicly state I appreciate all you're doing, all you're putting into it.
Before we go to A5, I do want to recognize Ms. Harris and Mr. Cheatham, our ET side of the house, and then our curriculum instruction, because for A1 through A4, we will have a data dashboard available for all of our schools and for our district administration and staff, where we can pull a lot of this data in a very expedited manner and have it at our fingertips as opposed to a bunch of different reports and trying to analyze. So it was a labor of love on the side of multiple departments, but did want to give them a lot of credit for something that was just launched into our schools roughly a week ago, where they can now take a look at where are we in college and career readiness today, where are we at middle school acceleration, where are our student proficiency, where's our PM2 data. We're going to enhance that with graduation rate and continue to enhance it with some student services panels where we can look at discipline data, attendance data, et cetera. Everything is a one-stop shop. So we wanted to give them a huge round of applause and credit for the work that was done that just got launched out to our schools recently. So
Very nice, very nice. Thank you.
So moving into A5, this was a new initiative this year, which was the expansion of athletics into the elementary level. So we successfully put out 2 elementary athletics this year, soccer in the fall and flag football in the spring. So in the spring, we had our soccer program at 31 of our elementary schools. And in flag football, we are up to 35 of our elementary schools participating. So our goal is to get to 50 of our schools at each of the sports out of the 56 that are eligible to participate. So a pretty lofty goal. I really would believe that we can get to 56 and get all of our schools heavily involved in this opportunity for students. So as you see on the screen and in the notes that you have, we had over 1,200 students participate in elementary athletics soccer, and we anticipate that a number will be at least 1,200, if not potentially higher with flag football. We are still gathering data that just started last week. So all the schools are really finalizing their rosters and formalizing the process. So very excited about this opportunity for our elementary students in grades 3 through 6. And the schools that have taken the leap of faith to participate in this and give the students something outside of just a traditional elementary experience that we can do here in Brevard, just a little bit different for them. So really, really excited as this continues to grow. For those of you that are listening, or for our board members, I will invite you to our flag football jamboree, which will be on March 8th. At a variety of schools throughout the district, so we can get you the schedule. Typically, we break all schools participating into quadrants of roughly 4 or 5 schools. We have about 8 to 10 quadrants, depending on the schools participating and the locations. And then all the schools arrive to one central location in that, basically that section. And then they all play one another in games. And so we just did that for our soccer. It was a terrific experience, and it was just great to see the students on a Saturday out there, families, community members, just really embracing this opportunity. So a great initiative that we're excited, and Kevin Robinson is doing a terrific job working with elementary schools. We're making sure that they have all of the materials that they need, all of the resources that they need in order to just launch this right away. All we ask them to do is designate a coach. We get them all the equipment, we give them all the training information, we give them all like practice plans and all the other materials that they would need to just open up and be successful. So really, really excited about that. For our S2 initiative, which is increasing elementary student awareness, as this was our first year, we were learning while doing, right? So we were really working through the process as we were implementing the initiative. So we will continue to work on that side of the house of making sure that well in advance all schools are designated that will be participating. We're getting information down to them, getting a coach designated earlier than we did this year, and that students can then sign up to participate in the athletic opportunity. So really excited once again that we are providing this opportunity to our elementary students, and we've seen a tremendous participation from our students, but more importantly, that Jamboree is fantastic with the parents that attend and the community members. And what certain schools do, they brought in food trucks, they brought in banners, some brought in officials, right? It was just a really neat event that kids truly, truly enjoyed being a part of, and all of them showed up on a Saturday. That was the best part.
I just added it to my
I just added it to my calendar.
I wanted to tell you, go ahead, Mr. Thomas, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
You know, last year, you guys had done so many great things coming across the finish line, and then I think it was, I grabbed Rendell and Raymer, and we were sitting there, and I said, how about just come on elementary school? And you guys said, well, we got to check with the board and everything else, and it's been, you guys, thank you for ultimately, it is one of the coolest things as a board member to make a decision, and then all of a sudden it turns into something where there's thousands of kids doing it. So I think that that's awesome. I did want to say, we were sitting with Miss Murphy today in Cocoa, and she said that this was incredible. I think she said she had over 100 kids trying out at hers for the soccer.
Yeah.
And the reason is exactly why we did this, which was they don't have the opportunity to play sports in some of these schools. And we have kids that are getting, instead of playing sports and being enriched into that athletic-minded individuals, they end up playing on their screens and getting involved in other things. So by the time they get to middle school and high school, they don't want to play. And this gives that opportunity as a vertical integration to getting sports into that elementary school and carrying it on. Dr. Rendell promised me that I was not allowed to ask for any more sports for a couple of years, just so that we could, but I do know that there's a big desire to play some more sports. So maybe in a year, we can reinvent this strategic plan for an S3 that says we'll put 6 sports together by 2030 or something. But I just, from the bottom of my heart, you guys, I wanted to say thank you. I think every board member's there. But I did want to say one last thing. One last ask. There were some kids in the regionals that were saying they could beat the other regionals, so we don't really have a true championship. Can we pull a true championship for the flag football and say, hey, on March 12th or something, all the regional teams can go play each other?
So we could look at that. We typically,
Or whatever it is, whatever afterwards we can
so
get it.
we operate off a 5-week season for the school. So they basically practice for 5 weeks, twice a week. We put parameters on how often they could practice and how long they could, just to make sure that we were, not overextending staff or overextending students. So then the Jamboree, we schedule strategically the weekend prior to us going on to spring break, right? So not leading into spring break. So we would have to take that in consideration. I do want to mention that with flag football, Mr. Cheatham connected us with Gary Miracle, who is the Suntree flag football person, and he helped lead our coaches conference. So a big shout out to Gary and his team for helping lead our coaches meeting that we held the Friday prior to the season starting. And he offered to try to enhance what we do with the Jamboree in the future and the location and how we can maybe bring more, if not all schools together and just have one, be a long day, but a day of, all the schools coming to one centralized location, have the opportunity to play schools from all over Brevard County.
And I've already started talking trash to my other neighboring school districts, so to say they can bring some teams over to lose too. So I think this is good. This is a lot of fun. So thank you.
And we all know that students involved in athletics and involved in sports,
Yep.
you know, the benefits that come from that academically, their social well-being, the way in which they interact with one another, the way in which they're able to navigate sometimes their emotions and resiliency, and obviously successful outcomes and then struggles that all come with it. So it makes them more well-rounded. So we're glad to start that down at the 3rd grade level and hope that that continues all the way through the 12th grade year.
Discipline, everything.
Mr. Chair? Yeah. I'm just curious, is it have to be in this time period, or can it be moved a little bit later to align with high school football? So maybe the winners or something could be play at some of the local spring halftime at spring football games.
Yeah, so we
Just some kind
actually staggered it to not align with, that could be something we look at with high school football, because we encouraged our elementary schools to reach out to their local high schools to have football players as their coaches and football players to volunteer and assist.
awesome.
So we didn't really want to hinder that potential opportunity, so that's why we did soccer in the fall and flag football in the spring. But we could definitely look at doing that, and if we add the 6 more, at some point, we're gonna have to move something, right, Mr. Susan?
Yeah, my only thought was just to integrate it more.
Yep.
Trying to, those, you know,
When we,
those elementary school kids are going to be eventually going to those high
Oh,
schools.
yeah,
so
100%.
it'd be
Yeah,
a
we
good
even
way to-
talked about hosting. So one of the neat things about soccer is
I'm talking football.
Well, I know, but
let's get straight.
I was going down to we actually had one of our jamborees was held at Bayside High. And it was really neat to watch the elementary students from that area, West Side, Port Malabar, right, that were playing on the Bayside big field, right, playing on the soccer field. They did the full length, the goals and everything. It was painted. Like it was awesome. So we had talked about, you know, bringing that to high schools, flag football, soccer. I know you're talking football, but so that they can get that experience and see what they could be in 3 years, 4 years, whatever it may be. So we can definitely look at realigning if we believe that that's in the best interest of the programs.
When we, Mr. Thomas, what happened is that we met with all the rec leagues and everybody else, and they came, initially, we said, okay, here's the idea. We met with them all, and they said, please offset it. Because what happens is that if we take some of those kids who want to play that flag football season, they take away from the rec league. Plus what Mr. Raymer was saying is that they have those coaches from the high school go down. Football high school coaches can go down and integrate many of their offensive and defensive schemes into the middle school and elementary schools. It just gets really cool when they're offset. But I do think you could have like we have spring football, we could have like a little quick thing to ignite it. Any expansion of athletics you want to go for, I'm right here with you, man. But I did want to let you know the reason behind the offset was because of that, that's all.
I appreciate that. We could talk, we could have our own seminar,
Listen,
you know,
I'm
work
still
session
trying
just on this.
I'm
so.
still trying to get them to approve rugby. Like I'm
Oh, my God.
Check
why
those
you guys
insurance
laughing at
policies.
that?
Okay, do we have any additional comments or questions about anything in the academic excellence goal? If not, that concludes our presentation for today. I appreciate Team Academic Excellence and all their work and efforts, and I appreciate the board's attention, and we'll see you next month. We'll actually be doing 2. We'll be doing exceptional workforce and community connection. So
Awesome.
I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I do want to thank you for your time. The effort you guys are putting into this is amazing. Something I didn't point out, but I will, that now that it's over, is it's refreshing, Ms. Harris, to hear that proper placement of students sometimes will overcome the importance to push a certain class. And I think that's so important. As a math teacher myself, I saw that and questioned that year after year. So thank you for doing that. Also, we can see what a well-balanced group up here, because we know the links between music and academics, and sports and academics, and I think I have 2 of each that would push both of those. And it's really nice to see and refreshing to see that our district is really pushing every area to make our students' experiences that much better here in Brevard. So, and you can never have enough school spirit. So, thank you. Very good presentation.
And I'd just add, the way each of you guys are very valuable in your areas and your teams, but the way you guys work together and integrate, I've been personally impressed with. It's cool to see how you each run with your areas, but you collaborate well together, so thank you.
And we need to give Cynthia a huge shout out because the last time a strategic plan was done for our district, we didn't have amazing Cynthia here leading this. So she's done an exceptional job. So thank you for all the hard work and driving this because this is tremendous. This is how we get to where our goal is. And so we thank you from the bottom of our heart for all the work you've put in on this as well.
Well, thank you so much. No flat tires yet, so I'm doing good. Yeah, I ask a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Rendell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so the next topic that we're going to cover is we're going to look at some data. When the state changed the school accountability model 2 years ago to a series of tests instead of one test at the end of the year, we found that to actually be very valuable. So for those of you that aren't aware, those watching, the state accountability system, the state assessments, the state tests, everybody wants to call them. In the past, there would just be one annual test late in the spring and that kind of thing. And we'd get the student scores over the summer and you could plan for the coming year, but the data's kind of old by then and you know, it's just not really helpful when you're trying to make informed academic decisions. And so the model that was implemented 2 years ago, basically the students take 3 tests, and in theory, the same test 3 times. You know, progress monitoring 1 occurs at the beginning of the year, so they kind of take the test at the beginning of the year, and then they take the test in the middle of the year for progress monitoring 2, and then at the final part of the year, they take a test for, excuse me, progress monitoring 3. So we have data from progress monitoring 2, so we want to share that with you now.
Francis starts, I just want to share today, the Florida Department of Education is presenting to the Senate based on some of the feedback from stakeholders around the FAST assessment. So some of that I'll interject as we go along, but I'm interested in to see what that says. Some of the ideas, and Nada, you speak up if I misspeak at all, but when we looked at what they were presenting to Senate, they were looking at things like if a student scores proficient on 1 or 2, can they be exempted from 3, or can that be utilized? So it's some of those things, and they had some counter opinions just saying, well, we would say that if a student were proficient at PM2, that they're on track, but that data point, we would want to design instruction to accelerate that student. And so they would still take 3 so that we could measure those acceleration practices. But as Dr. Rendell said, I think the power behind having a state assessment multiple times is it's not a gotcha. It is to drive instruction. What happens so the end of the year you are prepared for and you've designed instruction in response to those data checks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Rendell. So before, what I'm going to present for you today is I'm going to show you the comparison between PM2 to PM2 from 23 to 24 for K2 and 3 years worth for 3 through 10 in both ELA and mathematics. We're going to focus on the percent of students scoring at level 3 and above, which is considered on grade level performance. So before we start looking at the K2 data, one of the components that's really critical for us to understand is what are the expectations of the state? So the state expects kindergarten students for all PM to take the early literacy. First grade students for PM 1 and 2 to take the STAR early literacy. For PM 3, they take the STAR reading. For second graders, the expectation is that for all PM windows, they will take the STAR reading. However, there's a couple of caveats to this. If a student in kindergarten or first grade scores an 852, then for the next window, they would take the STAR reading. So I'll give you an example. For PM2, little Nada, kindergarten student, scores an 852. Then for PM3, I would take the STAR reading. Then for second grade students, what we do in Brevard is for students that cannot pass the practice test, and we have some, in second grade, we allow them to take the STAR early literacy so that the teachers have that rich data to be able to move them forward. And the same thing holds true for any first grader that's supposed to take the STAR reading in PM3, but they can't get past those critical questions. So we allow them to go back and take the STAR early literacy so we have that rich data.
And they still, for that first grader example she gave, they would take the PM3 in the reading assessment, but they would have the early literacy so that we have the data point as well.
So when we look at the data, we notice that K and first grade and kindergarten and first grade both demonstrated growth, whereas first grade, demonstrated a 4 percentage point growth. When we look at, and this is all based on percent at level 3 and above. So what's interesting with the first graders, there were only 1,380 students that participated in that first grade reading, star reading. Remember what we talked about, they're not expected to take it for PM2. So 1,380 students of ours, of our public schools. And 80% of those 1,300 students scored proficiency, at level 3 or better.
Something just before we move on to the math, just based on that Senate presentation for today, we were able to glean some data from that presentation that I just wanted to share. For the state, looking at K2, the state maintained in all areas, whereas Brevard, we demonstrated increases everywhere but second grade with a slight dip. And so I always look at, yes, we want to be moving, but I want to be moving faster than the state. And so we were able to confirm that in kindergarten and first grade, our amount of growth even exceeded what the state average was.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm just curious, are these scores used at all to evaluate whether a student would be recommended to stay in the same grade, repeat a grade?
Absolutely. This is data that is used for that. We have what we call a decision tree, and that is submitted to the Department of Ed, Department for Reading. It's called Just Read office. And so we have decision trees, but this is a driver that would say, we may have an issue here, but we wouldn't want to make one, that's a very big decision, so we wouldn't do it on one data point. And so for intervention and also to identify a student having substantial deficiencies, we look at multiple pieces of data, this being one, and then we usually give some deeper assessments to figure out, okay, you're not on grade level, but why? And so we look into those data points, and then we look at a whole picture of data, and that is that is the data that's used to make promotion decisions. The only grade level where fast data is required for promotion would be third grade. But even within that, we have good cause exemptions that a student could earn. So if they don't do well on the PM3, we have other pathways in which they could be exempted and placed in fourth grade.
And to your point, one of the ways that the state has been reporting their data is they'll take all of the start early literacy and combine it with the reading and come up with a percentage. So for us, 39% of our students were on grade level, level 3 or better, which is on grade level performance. When looking at the math data, for kindergarten, we realized that we went up 5 percentage points, and for second grade, when you combine K1, 2, 33% of our students for PM2, overall, we're at level 3 or better.
And again, here, the state average was a 2% increase over last year. And you see here for us in Brevard, we had 5% increases at kindergarten and second grade.
When looking at the ELA for grades 3 through 10, we're looking at the same percent at 3 and above. And when we look at grades 3, 4, 5, we noticed that there was a decline with sixth grade, 59% of the students performing at level 3 or better with a 2 percentage point increase.
And again, we're looking at the state performance, and we have, Nada just attended the state meeting for assessment directors around the state and saw that this is similar data to what other districts are seeing in these grade levels.
When reviewing the mathematics data, we realized that,
Did we go over the secondary?
did I miss the secondary? My apologies, I'm sorry. When we reviewing the grades 7, 8, 9, and 10, we noticed that grade 10 had the largest increase with 4 percentage points, with 49% of the students performing at level 3 or better, with 7th and 8th grade also demonstrating large increases of 3 percentage points.
And I think if we think back to the end of last year, in grades 3 through 10, we saw increases in every grade level in ELA. And so our secondary, that's why I noticed, like, this is a definite high point. We want to commend our secondary schools that they're really having student outcomes that are increasing over even last year that were high.
The mathematics grades 3 through 6 tell a little bit of a different story. And I will let Ms. Harris address when we look at 6th grade, we have 39% of our students scoring at level 3 or better.
So again, we do know that our surrounding districts are seeing some dips as well, but I need you to know what we are doing about this data. It was designed so that we would react to it and not be waiting for PM3. So I just want to do a shout out for the team in the back because we're doing some really deep dives to interpret this data and see what is the issue and peel it back. We are looking at, is it a curriculum problem? Like under the curriculum lens, we would look at resources. Are we using the right resources that are aligned with the benchmarks? We're also looking at instructional audit. So in that case, we're looking at if we have the right resources and they're aligned, then is delivery of that product. Like, how do we intervene with our content specialists and our instructional coaches between now and the end of the year to close the gap? And so that is direct collaboration between the CNI team and the school leadership team, because we create the information and the pacing guides and all of that, and then our school leadership directors are out boots on the ground seeing are the materials being implemented as designed. And so we're doing that as we speak. We are collecting that information to say, okay, our professional development for teachers moving forward, is it going to be on, we need to do more of this resource and maybe less of this resource, or is it the delivery needs to be a little tighter? And what that means is, my instructional practices. Am I following the plan to a T, or am I, maybe getting looser and we need to refine some of our practices?
So what I did, this is 7th and 8th grade. You'll notice that there is an increase for 2 percentage points for 7th grade, with 46% of our students scoring at level 3 or better. 8th grade has always been an anomaly because most of our 8th grade students are either in algebra and some of them are even in geometry. Would you like to address that also?
Yes, I think that is data points that you are very familiar with, is our 8th grade students. They're typically sitting in that pre-algebra for that, and then they'll take algebra as 9th graders. And so this data point represents students not taking algebra or geometry as 8th graders.
So the next 2 slides, what I wanted to do was demonstrate how we're doing as a district so that we can compare ourselves to how the state reported that they were doing as a state. So when we look at PM1 data, the state reported they had 36% of their students on grade level or scoring at level 3 or better, and Brevard has 39% of our students scoring at level 3 or better, although a 1 percentage point dip, but nonetheless, we're still reporting above the state. When we look at PM2 data, the state reported 45% of their students on or above at level 3 or better, and Brevard has 49% of their students. Now you'll notice that we've maintained from 2023 to 2025 consistent, so we've moved up a little bit from PM2 and just a slight dip from PM1, but nonetheless, we're still performing above what the state is seeing.
And not only are we performing above the state average, but we are growing at a faster rate. So we're increasing at a faster rate. The state increased at 9%, and BPS increased at 10%. So we're still above when we're talking about growth and movement.
And this is the same comparison for math. For PM1, we saw a 2 percentage point decrease, and we're still at 16% of our students performing at level 3 or better, and the state is at 15% of their students performing at level 3 or better. Although we saw a 4 percentage point decrease from PM2 from 24 to 25, however, we are equal to the state at 31. So what Ms. Harris was saying about the conversations we've had with other districts that are similar size to us, everybody's seeing the same kind of indicators with their math, and it's, when you look at the state data, it confirms what we've been told.
And then I feel like we've been always very transparent in naming what's going very well and then opportunities for growth. And so I feel like I need to point out that the state is increasing at a rate of 16%, and BPS is increasing at a rate of 15%. So we have work to do, just as far as, yes, we're right there at the average, but statewide was 1% faster in moving.
Are there any questions?
I'm gonna say something. I know, I'm gonna say something, because I'm like, you can't see those slides and not respond to them. So, there's work to be done, right? I mean, this is the stuff I agree that will keep you awake at night, and what are we doing? If we're giving them the best materials, where is the breakdown coming? Is it coming from the teacher? Is it coming from the principal? What's happening? And so what can we do to try to address it? Because even if we're moving faster than the state, I think it's still alarming, the rates that you're seeing of, being a 3 on grade level, and you're seeing some of those in the teen percentage. Ugh, that's not anything I think anybody's gonna celebrate right now. So thank you for being honest and transparent. I'm glad that you're honest and transparent. It's very important to call it what it is, but we have a lot of work to do.
And I think it was very timely, and we didn't really initially plan it to be right on the heels of academic excellence, but you saw, our goal is to be #top 10. And we made some very aggressive benchmarks and metrics. And so when we see a decline, we've talked yes, we look for trends, okay, so we're not alone, but our goal is to be better.
Right.
And so I want, for Dr. Rendell and all of you to know that we have never been more laser focused on the why, because we know about school improvement, and but we have to get to the why. Is it at the school level? Is it at the teacher level? Where is the breakdown? Why we have fewer students proficient at this time than we did last year. Yes, we tested earlier. You will hear people say that, but when you talk about number of instructional days, that does not equate to the dips that we are seeing. One of the other things, I think there is so much power in this new practice of data comms, not only for holding our principals accountable for their role in school improvement, but I think I have been on several campuses recently where, while that was uncomfortable, maybe, initially to come and speak, to your plan publicly, I will say a lot of the principals are replicating this on their school sites. I was at Gulfview Elementary this morning, and they were sharing how they brought their teachers in and really looking at the data and, what is the plan in your classroom, and really having those questions answered, because we know the number one indicator for student performance is that classroom teacher. And our teachers are working very, very hard, and we just want to make sure they're working hard on the right things. And so really that's just refining and reflecting. We're doing a lot of collaboration across the state with instructional practices, looking at materials, and that was part of that curriculum audit that I mentioned. We've pretty much nailed down that it's not the what we're using, because districts that are getting different outcomes are using the exact same thing. So now it's how and with what fidelity are we using materials.
Thank you.
I had a question about the K through 2 data that was on the slide, on the fourth slide. So if a kindergartner or a first grader moves early over into the STAR reading, then that kind of makes that early literacy data a moving target, hard to track, because it could go down for those early grades, and maybe it's because a lot of kids jump ship and accelerated, right? I'm going to borrow a secondary word. So is that, this is kind of a new, the STAR test, all of that is all new, and I know we're just getting our feet under us as far as like having standards, but how are we, this is just for us to look at, right? There's still so many variables in there. It makes it challenging.
There's several variables, and so you could not, with any type of clarity, look at PM1 to PM3 data for first grade, because it's not every time. It could be potentially different students.
Right.
Depending on what assessment they are taking. What I can tell you, and I hate to keep going back to the datacomms, but Ms. McDonough in that datacom discussion is talking about at the teacher level. And so we're pulling the data by teacher and then by student. So if you're making an individual plan for a student, you're looking at that data is Tara, was she in the early literacy? And I had that data point, but now she's moving here. So what does her instructional plan look like? So classrooms are having to look at it at the student level.
Yeah.
Just because this is a global approach, and even the Department of Ed has told us out of the Just Read office that this year's K2 data really should be considered the baseline for us moving forward. But it's not as clean as it is with other grade levels, just because students could be
Right, 'cause
taking,
the test
dipping in and out of
changes.
other tests.
Right.
If I may
No.
add.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that I mentioned earlier that the state is looking at the K2 data to mitigate some of the issues that you just mentioned is they're combining the Start Early Literacy and the reading. So if we combine ours, our percent is 39% of our students are level 3 or better, whereas the state has 35% of their students.
Right.
And
Okay.
if we do the same thing for math, we had 33% of our students, and the state had 32% of our students. So one of the ways that they're trying to mitigate those issues with the Start Early Literacy versus the reading is combining all of the students to come up with one. Yes, you look at it by grade level, but then you combine both to look at it as a whole.
Right. Yeah. Got to pick something. So I, first of all, appreciate the individual meetings that you had with us, Ms. Harris, so that we could dig in and not be surprised by what was going to be presented. I also appreciate the regular updates that the board gets after, good news or bad news or in between. It is very clear to me that you guys are focused, that it's not time to panic. If I'm hearing other districts are doing the same thing, but it is time to work, and it sounds like you're already going. I just have to brag on your work and our principals' work because of my school visits over the last few weeks. Almost to a person, every principal's had conversations with me about the Datacom meetings, about where they are, about what their strategies are, and the things they're putting in place, and the PLC meetings they're having. Sometimes I'm like, they're like, you have to go. We're done with our school visit because I have a grade level meeting I have to get to, and that takes priority over a school where we're going for a visit. So, but they're definitely talking about it and using it. So you guys you're doing the right work.
And I'll just reiterate, it's not time to panic, but it is time to respond.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything else? That's what I was going to use the analogy.
I said I didn't win all my games at halftime, so.
No,
Yeah,
I'll-
that was the point I was going to make before
Okay,
my
good.
throat started acting up.
that's fine.
The idea that we have PM1 data, PM2 data to help inform our instructional decisions throughout the year is so valuable. We're kind of midway through the journey, and in some areas, we're actually farther ahead than we were last year, but in some areas, we're not. And in some of the areas that we're not, we're like significantly farther below than where we were last year. So, but now we have that data. Now we know what we need to focus on. I mean, the PM2 data is by strand, by standard, so we can see what areas our students are struggling in, so we can attack that for the last few months of the year. So I think it's really valuable that we have this data. I think it's honorable that we're sharing the data publicly. We shared it with you guys each individually, but we're sharing it publicly. We want everybody to know where we are. We know where we want to be at the end, and so we were very successful last year, and we're still in striking distance of all those same targets. So, hopefully with a lot of hard work on the right work, we can be there at the end of the year. But, so not all gloom and doom. This is data that we can use to make decisions.
No, exactly. I was going to say some of the same things as a former instructor, always having that test at the end of the year. Boy, we just wished we had some information earlier in the year. Some of us did it in our classes where we did something early on and then halfway. But I mean, this is what we asked for. It's working. We're getting the data. Now we need to be reactive towards the data. So again, Matt, you said it right. I mean, this is what I would consider a halftime score.
And I mean, this now the work begins, right? It's a lot of times the teams that win are the halftime adjustments that are made. But I have complete confidence in the two of you and your team. The questions we asked in our one-on-one meetings, you knocked them out of the park. From what I'm getting when I'm visiting schools and talking to principals and teachers is they feel that it's a district fight now. It's not just their scores, that they feel that it's part of a team and a plan. So they thank you for making them feel that comfortable and making those changes in the classroom. So I just look for big things to happen from here until the end of the year. But thank you so much. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Chair. The next topic is an update on a pretty ambitious project that the board had launched several months ago. And part of the presentation will be a little bit of a history review. But we have had conversation and work on the possibility of constructing a separate day school for some of our most needy students. And this is a situation that kind of occurred by happenstance 2.5 years ago when we had 2 charter schools that service these students close at the last minute. And we took on educating those students as we should. And as we did that, the journey kind of grew a little bit. The board started looking at options about how we could serve those students better. And so we started talking about having this separate day school, a new building constructed, and we want to give you the update on where we're at with that process now. And at the end, we'll kind of ask for direction from the board as to keep going down this road or not, kind of thing, because that's the thing. We're kind of at an inflection point where we got to make a decision. So I turn it over to Sue or Pam? Pam first, all right.
Good afternoon. I want to first thank, I have Mrs. Bland, who is a director of our alternative programs, as well as Dr. Baez, who's a director for program support in our ESC. This has been a collaborative effort with Sue, working together as a team. But I wanted to really talk about the journey of how we got here for our request for a new separate day school. We want to focus on making sure that everyone knows that with our students, especially our students who are at a separate day school, they're our most fragile students, and they are the ones that have the most needs out of all of our students. So with that, I want to remind you of when I first started back in May of 2023. I think it was on the day I got appointed. It says, write this down, Pam, that Gardendale was a concern and it needed to be a focus of mine. So there was a concern with the programming, and I worked with Mrs. Bland and Dr. Baez, and we put a plan in place for that. But then there were also some concerns from the safety and facilities side of the house. And I worked with Sue on making sure that we put a temporary Band-Aid on what was needed for Gardendale at the time. So if you look at the flow chart here, this is how we got here. So I started in May, and then in July, we put together a plan. I did a presentation to the board of how we were going to put supports in place. And we did put supports in place. We had a model classroom. We did a lot of professional development. My team went in and did side-by-side coaching. We really did a gradual release. We were in that school all the time from July until December. It was an expectation, and we did not leave until we felt like they were ready for us to still provide support, but not to be there on a daily and weekly basis. So we actually did a gradual release of that support. And then in September of 2023, I had the pleasure of going with board members and the team, and we actually had an opportunity to go to Orange County and visit Magnolia Separate Day School, and really was like, wow. This is like a dream of what we would like to see in our schools. And then in May of 2024, a conceptual, we were given direction to go ahead and at least start planning out and designing and looking at the programming to design a new building. And we did that, and we brought that to the board. But when we think about a separate day school, today you'll hear, okay, this particular school is only servicing 156 students. But when we think about currently we're servicing 70 students, and that's give or take. But with that, we need the capacity to grow. And for some of our students who have those severe behavioral concerns that could actually be able to go there. We're stifled now because we really don't have the space. So when we think of our separate day school, these students, this is specifically designed to support students who are our most neediest as far as behavioral and academics. We really want to make sure that they have specific things in place. And we saw at Magnolia, those classrooms were small, there was a lot of support. They had the resources in those classrooms to meet. It was like night and day. The staff, they raved about it. They were not getting paid a whole lot, but they didn't have a whole lot of turnover because they had smaller classrooms. They felt like the students had what they needed. So with that, Gardendale, currently we offer a more individualized and focused educational experience for our students, and we really need to think about the intensive support. When we think about intensive support, we don't offer these supports in our regular gen ed setting, and we could not. So these students are in this for therapy. It may be for behavioral needs, which is the other social and emotional needs. So a smaller classroom will benefit them as far as even the student to teacher or adult ratio. So when we think about that, we really want to have a 3-to-1 ratio in some of our classes and a 5-to-1 ratio in others, in addition to additional support. If we were afforded to have a new building, this would provide expanded opportunities for our students to participate in some new elective classes offered. Currently, we do not offer music. And so these students would have an opportunity to, I mean, we saw it, the classroom at Magnolia. It was like, wow, those kids were so excited, and they performed for us, and they really did a great job. And we want to have our students experience this opportunity as well. Culinary arts. Ms. Bland actually surveyed the students to see what is it that you really would like to have if you could have any type of elective class, and they chose culinary arts because they know that they can provide, you know, they can sell things, they can create things, and we also had an opportunity at Magnolia to be served and see some of those kids in the kitchen just loving what they were doing. So that was an aha moment. So in culinary arts, these kids will learn how to, the cooking techniques, nutrition and food safety, which we know is important. They'll integrate math into that because they have to know about, 2/3, that kind of thing, as well as prepare for culinary arts in this particular class. Industrial arts is currently provided at the secondary level, but not to the full extent of what we really want to provide for our students. It's very limited due to space and to safety as far as having, the equipment and all of that. So this particular classroom will be built for our students to take advantage of this opportunity, and this would be a CTE certification for that. So very excited about that, as well as we had the opportunity to see what we call Blast here, to see this at Magnolia, where this is offered for our 18 to 22-year-old students. We really want them to know life skills so they can be productive, in our society. And we teach the basic skills in our life skills class, where they learn how to budget, cook, have the economy, focus on self-care and decision-making, all of those things which are good everyday life skills that we want all of our students to have. But this is specifically so these kids can function in a regular setting. As well as vocational classroom, currently this will just provide the opportunities where they'll get career preparation, and we'll be able to provide them with entry-level skills so they can find a position, hopefully, to be productive citizens in our society. We also want to have the hospitality lab, have that. We saw that in Magnolia. Again, I keep referencing that because this was like a aha moment. If we could just see it. These kids will learn how to clean, set the table, do all of those things that will teach them new skills as well as build their self-esteem. Some of these, I mean, they're so excited when they can do independent and perform independent opportunities. And we want to equip our students with the skills and knowledge that they can lead to meaningful employment. And we know that's the ultimate goal for our students. Some of the essential needs for a successful separate day school, we want to, currently, we do not have this in all of our classrooms in Gardendale. We know this is very important to have in-classroom restrooms. And this will really maximize the time for learning in the classroom where kids don't have to have someone walk them, taken away from instruction in the classroom. They'll have it inside the classroom, in every one of our classrooms. So this will minimize unsupervised visits to the restroom. And single point of entry was very important, even where we're at right now. You know, we don't want kids jumping the fence. We don't want them roaming. Single point of entry means that you come in one way and you can go out only one other way, but it's very, very secure. And this is a safety concern. So we want to make sure that our kids are safe and they're learning and that they have access to school, but we have a safe learning environment for all of our students. And we don't have to worry about, you know, students eloping and things of that nature. So when I think back on my journey, when I came to Brevard Public Schools, I think about some of the common rooms. Misty wanted that, and we created one or two of these, but we really need to have access to more of these in our pod areas so kids can go and self-regulate if they're upset or if they're not having a good day, where we really can go in and they can really calm and relax and have this environment where students are learning to improve their behavior and manage those behaviors. And we do not have those in every area in our current location. And then the observation rooms, we do not have these at all at Gardendale. This is where we can go in and observe and collect data without interrupting the classroom and really looking at the students in real time and how they're functioning in the classroom so we can get services and supports to them sooner. So, you know, these are all types of interventions. If we can get in there and get all the, collect all the data, we can provide interventions in the appropriate manner for these particular students. And when I think back on it, I think success is a journey and not a destination, and that's by Ben Sweetland. We're on a journey, and I know we can thrive and do better for these students. And I really hope that we will consider moving them to a location that is conducive to their learning and what their needs are. They're small, but they're mighty. Turn it over to Sue.
Just need the slide changer. Good. So good afternoon, everyone. As Pam said, this has been quite a journey. We've been working on this for quite a while. Ms. Bland and I were kind of teammates in the, oh my gosh, we suddenly need a separate day school project that happened several years ago. And I think all of us agree that there's a better way to serve our students. We've had concerns about the transportation issues and trying to find a central location, just concerns about the facility renovations that have been ongoing at Gardendale, trying to do a better job, but it's just not the right place for those students. And so we've been working really hard in collaboration with Student Services to try to find the right solution for this. And I have sort of similar slides that have a bit of history that just kind of walks through the board work sessions where we've been before you and kind of talking through the process. You do have in your package kind of a compilation of those presentations that show you how we got here. But more or less where we are now is we have Harvard Jolly Architects. Renee Trisella is principal with Harvard Jolly and has been leading the project as our consulting architect. Dave Lindeman and Chris Payne, our project manager, have been working with Mr. Trisella. And we have developed what I think is going to be a good solution in collaboration with the Student Services team. So we just wanted to kind of show you today where we are. This is the Kennedy Middle School site, and we've put a lot of effort and a fair degree of resources into making sure that this project can in fact integrate into the Kennedy Middle School site. And so we've tested a few different arrangements of the building and the traffic circulation, and we believe that this will work pretty well and will allow Kennedy to function independently and of the separate day school, and that will work independently with different times of arrivals of students and teachers and such, and we will not need to really share much in the way of facilities other than the kitchen facility at Kennedy will provide the food for the students at the separate day school. So that'll be a savings for us. And then this shows you in a little bit more detail how the site will be laid out. And then this slide shows you the detail of the building layout. And so worked very closely with student services to align the spaces to best serve the students and the faculty. And I've now reached the level of my understanding of what I can explain about that. But Mr. Trisella and Ms. Bland, Ms. Bias, and Ms. Dampier, I'm sure can go into more detail if you'd like some more information about the alignment of the spaces. It's about a 44,000 square foot building designed for 156 students, including EBD and IND functions, as well as some shared spaces that Ms. Dampier described. And so for me, we are ready to go full forward with design and the project. So I just wanted to show you this is where we are. We believe it fits. We believe it works. We believe it's programmed appropriately for the students that we will be serving, as we put a lot of effort into checking those things to make sure that it will in fact work. And then our next steps is that we will proceed with the full design. We will shortly go out for an RFQ for a construction manager. We'd like to get a little bit farther into the design process, but we want to have a construction manager on board so that we can work side by side with the construction manager and the architect as we finish up the design. And then anticipate pre-construction in fall of 25 and starting construction around January of 26, opening around July of 27. We will do our best to accelerate that, but that's kind of the typical schedule if we were to just proceed in our normal fashion. The key point is that we will need funding to be in place in fall this year in order to execute a construction contract. And so I've taken a quick look at our funding scenario. The estimated cost is right around 20 million, kind of all in, site work, FF&E. This project is eligible for educational impact fees because it is providing additional student stations. We have been accumulating and using north area impact fees, which grow at a slower rate than the south area. So right now we have about 6-ish million that's reserved for this project. So that's cash in hand. We have allocated a small amount of capital in this fiscal year. We haven't used that yet. We do have Harvard Jolly under contract for the full amount of the design, so that's already off the table. So we really just need to fund the construction and FF&E. So some of my thoughts on funding strategies: we can continue to use the North Area impact fees. At this moment, there is not a demand for a different project, so that makes good sense. Philosophically, this facility does serve students from the north and the south. We've batted around the concept of whether we should use some south area impact fees. That would need to be a decision that we run through our educational impact fee benefit district committees, as well as the school board, as well as the county commission. But that is not, in my opinion, out of the question. We probably need Mr. Gibbs to weigh in on that. But the facility is pretty much right on the boundary, so it's just over the boundary of the line between north and south. We could also allocate additional capital, and we can also look at the line of credit financing. I've talked with Mr. Ford about that, and there's possibilities that are open in that arena as well. So I think today we would like to ask you to consider us moving forward with the design with the intention of building the facility. And we collectively, myself, Ms. Lisinski, Dr. Rendell, and our financial folks are going to need to come up with some strategies for this project, as well as the South Brevard projects that we talked about, I think, last month or a few weeks ago. So if you have questions about the layout of the building, we have our folks here that can answer those, and otherwise, we are good to go. So thank you.
All right, questions from board. Let's go first.
All right. Let me just start off by saying how excited I am about this. So I don't share a lot about my previous life prior to being on this board, but I ran a home health agency that specialized with working with individuals with developmental disabilities for 10 years. And so walking into that school and seeing some of the things I was seeing, mind was completely blown. Shout out to Magnolia. Thank you, Orange County, for letting us come and take the field trip of all field trips, because really, I think it did really plant the seed in all of our minds of how we could serve this population who already has so many additional challenges that we do not have. How can we serve them better? So I am excited. You have my full blessing. Let's go forward. Let's do good work. Let's get this built. We're looking at the impact fees, because it does serve the entire district, I think it would be smart of us to look at this coming from south and north end, because it serves the entire district. But I also understand there's a huge need in the south end for schools. And so, kind of looking ahead to the future and what we're going to do there, I know you're juggling all of those things.
It could be a zero-sum game, so
Yeah.
we're going to look at that as a package.
Yeah.
And see the best way to do that.
But I love the hybrid approach. I talked to Mr. Ford yesterday, and so I don't know that they don't love it as much, because when we took the line of credit when we built the middle school, we didn't use the line of credit, which I'm extremely proud of this board for not using that line of credit. We want to be good stewards of the dollars we have, and we want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible. So I love that idea. From a lender standpoint, obviously, they're probably not so excited because they would prefer the loan, which I understand, but. Yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm like, go forward, do good work. Let's make this thing happen yesterday, so.
Very nice.
Yeah. So first off, we need to make sure that Mr. Thomas gets its own private field trip to
Yes.
Magnolia School, so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. This is great work. I'm excited to hear about the music classroom, of course, but also the other spaces. Just breezing through the floor plans and the design, it looks incredible. And I am absolutely let's move forward and let's get it done. It comes to funding. I hear you. I appreciate you wanting to balance it out, but I appreciate my compadre from the north here recognizing, we've got stuff. I want to build as much as we can without debt at all. And so if we can, and a lot of times, every time quarterly that we vote to move the next step for our impact fees, almost always those north fees, once we built what we did at MIMS and a couple
South
other
Lake.
places, right, we're using it to pay off debt, which the debt, some of it north, south, it kind of all gets shuffled around. If we can do this using the impact fees and get out of this building debt free and be able to take care of the other needs that you just presented to us 3 weeks ago with the south impact fees, plus we're going to have to do some other financing there. That's what I would prefer. But yes, to putting your foot on the accelerator and let's go. I'm glad we'll at least be breaking ground before I'm done on the board. But I think this is the right thing to do for students. And I love that we're opening up the capacity. Thank you for mentioning that, because I think we've had conversations with parents through the years and teachers feeling like that wasn't where their child was not the correct placement. But we didn't always have those placements. Now let me ask you one question I have about BLAST. So we're Long County, and we have long established BLAST programs in multiple areas, and we've added some even. Is the idea that we would continue to have those BLAST programs in certain areas? This is a Dr. Bias question, maybe. And give her all the microphones.
Yeah, she's getting all
Give
the
them
microphones.
to her.
So.
And then this would be just for those people who are in kind of the central area?
So we do. We have 7 total, and in fact, last year we moved Clear Lake into and split it with Cocoa and Vieira. So those are our newest. It's a really good balance between the 7 from the top of the county to the bottom, and some are in that range of maybe 18 to 20, and others are in like a 10 to 12 range. So the balance right now is really, really good. We don't have plans to add any more, but the fact that Gardendale will have an opportunity to experience some of those same things things for our 18 to 22-year-olds, and post-secondary is pretty exciting, so.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that you guys incorporated those ideas into the plan. I just wanted to make sure, because I know like our people down in South Palm Bay, they probably don't want to drive to Rockledge, to Kennedy, you know, the area when they have a awesome program down there that's been going on for a lot of years.
I was just going to add too, we do have Project Search, so that's at our hospitals, right? So the experience there, Palm Bay is going to be a new one. So adding that down south is going to have an impact on some of our blast sites because the students are interviewing and then being accepted into the internship. That's kind of balanced out as well with the addition of the Project Search.
Right. So it really
sites.
expands our opportunity to meet those needs. No, that is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I really like the gym that was in there because
Oh, my
you
gosh.
can have some
All
athletic
sports.
programs inside there. But no, I did want to say thank you. One of the opportunities we might want to look at for the funding is also, are they going to share chillers or are they going to have separates? They're going to share.
I'm sorry, Renee Trussell. They will be standalone.
I was going to say, because if they're shared on some sort of a system, you could use the half-cent sales tax when you upgrade to reduce some cost. You know what I mean? There's some opportunities there where you can share some of the resources and maybe draw down some of it because you're upgrading facilities from Kennedy at the same time, just as an idea. But if they're standalone separate, then I don't think you can. But from a designs perspective, if we do, like, you know, Vieira High School has some big chillers over there. Sometimes you can run two facilities off of one and then utilize that with the half penny cent sales tax if Kennedy's low. And then there's just some other opportunities there. Thank you. This is really good. I'm really excited about it. After we went over there and I saw what was provided to those Orange County students, and we could do that here. Thank you. And Dr. Rendell, thank you. That's it.
John?
Obviously, I'm the newbie, so I don't have a lot of experience being able to see what you all are talking about. I did have some initial questions, but obviously, seeing my colleagues' enthusiasm for the project, I really would love to go see Magnolia if I could.
I'll
That'd
go
be
again.
awesome.
If I may, we were the architects for Magnolia as a firm and myself, so anytime you'd like to go, somebody will tell me. I'm sure I can make that happen. I know you guys did before, but I'll be happy to facilitate that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm done. Thank you.
One of the things that when I was a teacher at Space Coast, a lady named Miss Danielle Campbell ran the BLAST program there, and I built a lot of outdoor facilities for her. I built a butterfly garden. I built a garden for her with the, you know what I mean, and everything else. And those BLAST students were really, really into, you know what I mean, turning the soil. One of the things we saw over there at the Magnolia Day School was they had a large, like an agricultural area. I didn't see it on there. So if there's an opportunity to kind of look at that, I do know that those are some great opportunities for those kids because getting them out and getting them moving and turning their hands like that works really well. So it was just one of the things I saw there that I didn't see here. Plus we have a big agricultural initiative to tie ag in. And Kennedy's got a lot of those fields that don't get used in the back. You know what I mean? So there might be something to do. So that's all. Just an idea. Thank you.
Exciting times. So obviously, full steam ahead. And as far as financing, I look forward to hearing some of your ideas. I mean, we're always amazed at what you can do with the financing options there. And I'm sure you're looking forward to all the combinations and permutations that we may have for financing. But I think we're in a good position. And it's exciting to be able to provide for the students, all the students, and in this particular case, both from the north side, north and the south. So I look forward to watching this project start and finish. And again, wonderful job, and I appreciate it. Any other questions, Board? Dr. Rendell?
Nothing, no. I think, as has been said, a lot of really, really good work has been done on this project. So we're ready to go. We just wanted one more final approval before we go any further.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I didn't know if you wanted to take a break before we start the policies.
Guys, what do you think?
It's going to be
5 minutes? 5 minutes? Yeah. All right. Yeah, we'll recess for 5 minutes. All right. The last topic on the agenda today is policy review. Please open the attached documents for review.
Mr. Chair, if I may just say thank you to Nina for printing out all of these for us. She did a great job. Thank you for such an amazing job, Ms. Lena, for making sure we had all of our policies ready, so thank you.
All right. Actually, I want to get mine. So.
Would you like mine? Oh, you got it.
These are them, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm just going to do this. All right. So, does any board member have anything we want to start on the first one at 0169.1? Public.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Did you call me?
Sure.
For this public participation, correct?
Yeah.
Is that the right one?
Yes.
So I looked at the two proposed ones, and I'd just like to submit a few thoughts and also some things I'd like to see personally. I'd personally like to see changed. If we're going to be modifying our public participation policy, I think we should be looking to expand engagement, not restrict it. And so I think we all want varying perspectives. We all want transparency. We all want to, promote engagement. And so I don't want to make any policy that is geared towards any dynamic that exists right now, because that dynamic could change politically 5 years from now. So I like to make, I like to have encourage as much participation as possible. And a couple of things I'd like to change. One is very minor. One is in the first paragraph of both of the examples. It says that the members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on a proposition before the board. And personally, I don't see why we even need to include the word reasonable, just that they should be given an opportunity to be heard. Next one would be on for the portion where we're talking about the public addressing agenda items before or at the beginning of the meeting. I personally would like to have 3 minutes on each agenda item, not 3 minutes collectively. So as I understand it, if we had 10 things on the agenda and somebody wanted to speak on 5 of them, they'd have to condense their comments to a total of 3 minutes at the time allotted when we go to speak. I would like to have public comment before each agenda item so we can allow maximum participation among the public. And those are my comments.
Okay. Paul, is the word reasonable in there for a legal purpose? Or?
I think that's comes straight out of test.
Yeah, it's Neola included it because you're only required by law to provide a reasonable time, and some districts say up to 30 minutes or 60 minutes for public comment. So the more speakers you have, the less time they get to address the board. So that's why it's in there.
Okay. And just one final comment on that. Just my perspective is that we're in no hurry. We're here on any particular item. The public should be able to address us. I don't disagree with having a time limit, but they should be able to address us on each item that they have a concern about. And we're not in a race to get done with the meeting. We're here for them, and we're here to create the best policies possible. So we should be able to, I think we should afford the public the maximum amount of opportunity to speak. And I'll try not to pop in more.
Okay.
Hey, do it all you need to. So I just have a thought that word reasonable actually comes straight out of statute. So I was just trying to pull one up, but I don't have a problem with reasonable. I think for me, it's not an offensive or a limiting thing. It's just one of the things that we have actually in the policy. I think this would go to reasonable is there's actually a part that says that the public comment doesn't have to be in the same meeting. For example, if I don't know that we've never done this specific thing, but if we knew there was a big thing coming up and we were going to take a vote and there was going to be lots of public interest, we could have a separate meeting or if we'd known we had people, well, actually, we have done this before, but let me play out my scenario. If we want to have a special meeting, because we knew there were going to be people coming out in droves, and we have a special meeting just to hear all the public comment, we can take the vote at another meeting, don't have to have any public comment at that, right? That's part of our policy. One of the times we actually did engage that was during the mask decisions. We had public comment for months. And so we actually had a meeting where we did not have public comment, but we shortened it all down to 1 minute apiece, I think, because we'd heard lots of things about masks and really didn't need necessarily more public comment about masks at that particular time. So I think, I don't have a problem with reasonable. We can go back and forth and see. Comments before every item. It's interesting because we've had different people come up with different suggestions and say, oh, you should do it like the county commissioners, you should do it like this, that, the other. We have the authority and reasonableness to make it how we want. I don't know that I would be in favor, me individually, of doing for every single item, but because the consent, I think there is a possibility for it to be abused. And I'm not saying we're in a hurry, but we have had at different times opportunities when we have policy hearings where people can come up and speak 6 different times. They can come up and speak. At the times when we approved 50 policies in one meeting, they had the opportunity. They could have come up and spoken 50 times. But at least to put consent together. Really, besides consent, the only thing that we have that we don't have separate, if we have anything to vote on besides consent, we have a public hearing for, which is a separate public comment time, the action agenda, which really is just the contracts, procurement, those are the main things. But anything beyond that has its own separate public comment time. So if you wanted to separate out the contracts, I guess so. But I wouldn't. I'm not particularly in favor of separating out for every single thing, but rather, if we wanted to have an extra one, we could do it if anybody had public comments on any particular contracts, which would go under procurement. Pardon me, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go through, when I first looked through, I went through what Mary Jo sent us, which was the Neola, and then Paul sent us the one that he had recommended, and which was really our policy with some changes. So I want to make sure that which was good because we had a section in there about signs, which the Neola policy didn't have. We want to make sure we have that information about signs so that people are informed before they come. Sorry, let me move my notes. And we also had our own rules about the sign up, which I think we need to continue to have that people can sign up all the way to the beginning of the public comment time. But I would say we want to make sure if we could add a word in there that says the first public comment time. So people can sign up all the way till we get to that first public comment time. And that's when it'll end for both sessions. And I don't know it says that specifically. Thank you, Paul, for putting these definitions. Also, the Neola policy deleted irrelevant, and I think that's a really important part. And actually, I think you put it in a couple different ways about irrelevant because we don't really need people talking about things that we have absolutely no control over, like the space shuttle program not being canceled, or I'm just trying to think of random things that actually haven't come to us, but we've had just as irrelevant or more things come to us. So I think it's important to define all those definitions. For us to prohibit profanity, expletives, that's in a reasonable way. I think that takes care of some of my concerns, I know, with some of the changes that we have been challenged to do by the courts. I feel like, okay, don't call it obscene, don't call it abusive, but it's still profane. And I think for decorum's sake, which the state law allows for us to do, we need to include those definitions. There was one thing, when we talked about yesterday, do you remember what it was? I can't remember now because I didn't write it down.
Which part?
There was, remember the thing?
FCC things where we needed to add a word or something?
Oh, yes. So, yes. So in board, if you're looking at the one that has all the red lines on the highlights, it's page 5. Not that one. It's the Word doc. I'm sorry. I didn't ask for paper copy because I preferred to have mine digital. Sorry.
there is a section about the FCC, and we've been challenged on this a couple of times that because we're a public entity, we don't have to follow FCC guidelines, but we do have the option to say that the board adopts the FCC guidelines when it comes to indecent, profane content. Obviously, the state says parents can come and read from books that are they're challenging in our media centers, but I'm not. The reason why I would want to potentially do that is because there's some things that are in the FCC regulations that I think even excluding profanity, FCC, one of the quotes that's in here, FCC describes profane content as content that excludes grossly offensive language that is considered a public nuisance. I would put forward that I think if someone is going to use a racial slur in public comment time, that's not necessarily an expletive, but it would be inappropriate and against decorum. Now, that could also go under inciting, which the policy the changes that Paul put forward to us includes inciting language. But I think here's a possibility for us to just say, we're going to, even whether we're videotaping it or not, the board chooses to align our rules of decorum with the FCC. Whether or not we actually have to abide by them or not. But I just, again, just to have some kind of decorum that we can maintain.
Can I weigh in on this? Just, obviously we're talking about
Oh,
this,
yeah.
so it's a conversation. I don't know how it would be the board's responsibility to regulate the public comment to comply with FCC. I think we could really get ourselves in the weeds again with, are we going to listen to the comment in its entirety? There's a lot that's going on that I would be hesitant to say we're going to comply with FCC regulations because I'm afraid that we will be in a policing situation again as we have been in the past. That's my personal thoughts on that. Paul, can you weigh in on FCC regulations?
Which part? The FCC provides some additional guidance from the perspective of profanity and content that may be helpful to a board on what is reasonable as far as decorum goes. And those rules are already out there, so you're not trying to start from scratch, like our definitions and things. So, the chair would have some guidance to lean on, and that's why when I spoke with Howard and Jennifer, they were, kind of, let's expand the FCC stuff and include some more of their guidance on our policy. Obviously, it's up to you guys whether you want to include that or not.
But if we weren't taping them, then it would be irrelevant, correct? That only matters for if we're projecting it out to the world.
FCC rules apply if you're broadcasting on network television.
Right.
So if you adopt their standards for your meeting as far as reasonable decorum goes, you can apply it during your public comment, whether you're broadcasting on network anyways. You wouldn't be held legally liable by the FCC if you're not broadcasting on network. But you're just saying we are taking their standards for what's appropriate during 6 and 10 o'clock and applying it to our meetings. That's where you would be incorporating their standards.
Okay. All right, well, I'll let the conversation continue. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Campbell. I don't know if you were done.
That was kind of where I came to a pause. I may come back around later, but those are my initial thoughts on this. The only thing is, I don't think we included in here any piece about we'll need to give direction on cameras. You didn't put anything about the cameras, did you?
The cutting of the cameras?
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was something where we cut at the non-agenda items, I thought.
I'm sorry, what letter? I probably missed that. Where is it? I know, I lost track. That's okay, I'll find it.
Yeah.
You can keep going, whoever's next.
Right, man.
So I wanted to, because it's inside of there, I wanted to kind of go through a couple of these. So one of the things we do is we have the form that they are to identify the agenda item or the non-agenda item ahead of time. What's that? Oh. So I just wanted to make sure, because it dances around. This policy, to be honest with you guys, I'm glad that Paul did what he did and put this together, because this policy is kind of it's been rewritten like 3 or 4 times. So you have like carryover from other policies, and you're reading some of it sometimes, and you're like, man, where'd that come from? And I remember where it came from. So just my main points is that we always have somebody fill out a form identifying if they're going to speak to the agenda item or if they're going to speak to the non-agenda item, right? That way it separates it and we get it clear. It didn't speak to this, but we kind of have it in there that they're allowed to fill out those forms all the way up until we start public comment. And the reason for that is that I've seen a lot of in the past, whether they're employees of the district or moms or dads or somebody that are getting off work, and having it at the start of the meeting kind of cuts them out because there's no way they can get here. So I think giving them the opportunity to speak up until the time that we go to public comment is good. And that's for the first time. So not that you can come into the non-agenda item and show up at 8 o'clock at night and with a bunch of people and start speaking. Also, the public speaking, I read it in one, and I'm not sure if it was in the other. If they're speaking to the agenda item, it has to be about the agenda item. It can't be that they're, moving on, start talking about a bunch of other stuff and, ramble and stuff like that. And then agenda items versus non-agenda items. We have the agenda items going on during the board business and then the non-agenda items afterwards. Paul, I was confused because it says, what I thought we did was we end the business meeting and then we sit and wait for the speakers to speak and stuff like that. Is that correct? Is that the proper process?
You mean, are you adjourning the meeting?
Yeah. You adjourn the
You
meeting.
can if that's how you want to set it up, but then the board is not required to stay.
Right.
If you guys don't like what you're hearing, I can't prevent all of you from getting up and walking out of the board meeting.
Well,
if you don't adjourn the meeting, I have to have 3 members sitting in the room. Otherwise, it's like, we got to stop the meeting because I don't have a quorum.
I'll be honest with you. I think that we should all stay for those non-agenda items, through them. And I know that it's difficult sometimes, but I think that's our due diligence. But I do know that I think that we should adjourn it just because of the way the legalities and everything else do it, and we can sit there and listen to them. I would make that recommendation, and then I would also say that our agenda items, you move to 3 minutes, just like we had, and then for the non-agenda items afterwards, we can move to 1 minute with the board chair being able to give extension for more minutes if they want to. And the reason I came up with that is not to cut back on people's speaking times. But the issue is that I saw that with the Department of Education, and it went very well. When people are there to speak about a topic, then they can do it in a minute, and the board chair can say, I extend the time if they would like to. Those are just some of my suggestions, but I know we're workshopping around, but I think we're in a pretty good spot with most of it, but that's all, just a thought.
Nice. Megan? That's right.
So again, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Thomas, and I agree with you. Like, we don't want to limit public's participation in the governance of what the board is doing. I think the problem that we have right now, or that we have seen happen, is that a lot of times the public comment isn't regarding governance, it's regarding other things. And so that's taking us away from really what we're supposed to be doing. I like the idea of splitting agenda versus non-agenda. I think that would be smart for the board to do. So that's kind of what this policy that Paul's typed up has laid out for us. I don't support adopting the FCC rules and regulations. That's me personally. I don't think we should do that because I'm concerned that it's going to put us in a situation to stop someone from saying something because we're concerned we're violating FCC regulations when really, again, we're not supposed to police the public comment. That was one of the big messages that we got from what came out of some recent litigation. Yeah.
Speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
One of the things that we were concerned about going with the FCC was because we didn't want them to speak in those terms while we were online for our public. But if we move that to the non-agenda at the end and we allow them to speak afterwards without the cameras,
Right, then
I
it-
think it dovetails into what you're trying
Right,
to
you
say.
don't necessarily need
That's
the
all.
FCC
Just as-
part of it. So in order to give people ample time to speak about the agenda items, because they may very well have 6 agenda items on there that they want to speak about. And that is going to be really hard to get in front of us and give us a clear thought of what they're trying to say for 6 agenda items in 3 minutes. Would the board's appetite be to extend maybe the possibility, if they list so many agenda items, we can rank it, I don't know, if it's 1 through 5, they get 3 minutes. If they want to speak for more than that, I don't know, or are we overcomplicating it? I'm just trying to think of how do we balance the idea of letting them have the ability to speak and be able to convey what they want to us as a board, hear them. That is our responsibility, is to listen to the public and hear what they're saying in regards to things that we're governing and voting on. So
I can help. In all the years I've been on the board, I've never seen anybody not be able to speak to the agenda items they have, right? So they had the 3 minutes, and no matter what was on there, I never heard anybody moving through multiple agenda items. Not to say that that's not true. That's the reason that I put in there, the board chair can give the opportunity to extend. And you know, and I know just as well, that when somebody's up there trying to pour their heart out to us and give us their opinions and
Right.
stuff like that, that the board chair can extend, and I think that would be the opportunity to do so. I'm open to ideas, but I do know that once we start doing that, it starts opening
It
into
gets a
Pandora's
little-
box.
yeah.
I like where
Where Paul's at?
where Thomas is going. I like what he's saying about expanding. I just know we've never seen it to where, I just be honest, that an individual comes in and says, okay, I'm going to speak about these 15, we're going to go through it, because we usually don't have that. So I think that it'd be cleaner to just say, board chair can extend the conversation if they're bringing up good points in their.
Is that not in here already, that we can extend
You can
minutes
extend it
upon
with a vote.
It's
a
in
vote?
one and not the other. I just wanted to kind of hone it down.
If I could clarify just that one point, Mr. Susan, that's, I definitely would like to, when I say have 3 minutes for each agenda item, the conversation needs to be germane to what we're talking for that agenda item. In my experience, and I did it for 8 years on a city council that had a similar policy to what I'm suggesting, it was not abused. Not saying it cannot, there are certainly potential, but there's always potential in anything. But it does afford on specific, especially where that's going to come up, and majority of the time, I think, is going to be on issues. If there are a couple of big issues or serious issues that we're addressing in a particular board meeting, it gives the public a chance to talk about that without rushing through it, gives us a chance to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to fit everything into 3 minutes.
No, and I know, and so like our large issues, I look back, and Ms. Campbell, you can agree with me or disagree, but our large issues usually come when we do our policies. So our policies all have separate speaking engagements on each one of them, whether that was
And they
masks
do
and
get
stuff
the,
like
yeah,
that.
they get
so
the
they have
opportunity
extra
to
time
speak
already.
to it.
And
Yeah.
those aren't abused. I mean, from what I saw,
Well, then-
most of the time, there's not public comment.
No, it's not. I mean, honestly,
Well,
most of the time.
people, it depends, I mean, when we did like 50 at a time, no, but most of the time, we don't have 50 at a time. We'll have some on these, but the chair calls them up, and it's not even a sign-up time. If you want to speak on this policy, line up, and it's still the 3 minutes, they still get a full 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
I personally think they should sign up before they do it. I agree with Mr. Susan as far as up to have a cutoff a little after the start of the meeting. But having people sign up for particular agenda items allows the chair to, or Paul and the chair to run the meeting, with some structure.
I'm curious, how do you manage that with a consent agenda? Because we're going to vote
Right, I think
consent
we're
all
talking-
together.
So maybe we define that. I don't have any, it's the primary agenda items. Consent, for instance, unless something's pulled off of it, I guess we could leave it where somebody can comment on something that's not pulled off the agenda item. I'm going back on memory, I think we allowed that in there, but very rarely was there a comment about the consent agenda if nobody pulled something.
Right. Well, because the board, the way we do it now, and I'm just trying to think how I've seen other boards do it, the way we do it now is the public comment time comes before the board has the opportunity to pull anything. So we don't even take a motion to accept the consent agenda until public comment is completely done. I could see how, but however, we have had before where people come up and during the public comment time, which is before all that, they address something that concerns one or more board members, and so then the board member pulls it so we can have further
Right.
discussion. That happens, but we wouldn't have more public comment then, it would just be based on
Or,
what we heard.
or prior to, when we first announced the consent agenda, somebody could sign up for the consent agenda, not knowing that something's pulled or not, just like I think last meeting, we had concern over field trips. I don't know if I think it was on the consent. Anyways, somebody sees something on a consent agenda that they want to comment on, they can comment on it, whether we pull it or not. They could just, they have the, and it might
Except
cause one of us to say, hey, you're right, I want to pull that, 'cause after you brought that point, somebody brings a point up.
I want to circle back to what you had your turn, Mr. Chair.
Yes. So pertaining to what you had said, Ms. Campbell, though, that the issues that we're going to have public comment on, we've had public comment time before it gets to the board meeting, policy meeting, where they can come up, and it hasn't been abused, which then would in turn, then we don't need to make in my opinion, special policy for it to be in our board meeting, because it's not being even abused or used as much in our policymaking sessions. So I'm all for not limiting speech. That's why I'm for giving multiple times, on agenda items and at the end. I would not be in support of per agenda item because we haven't had, like I think Matt said it, I don't believe we've had many 3-minute talks and then they were talking about a specific agenda item and needed more time to talk about an agenda item. We just haven't had that. So we're actually, we potentially could be, doubling public comment time if we give them 2 different times to speak. It is a business meeting. That's where we need to conduct our business. And it's one thing I did learn at FSBA in December was even sometimes board members don't even realize the purpose of a business meeting. It's to conduct the business of the district, and what it's not is just to inform the public. It's part of, we need to be in sunshine to conduct our business, but it isn't an evening to just do nothing but inform the public of what we're doing. They're informed by watching us. That's why we have to do it under sunshine. So we can't get caught up in that. Sometimes a yes vote or a no vote is fine. We don't need to explain it for 15 minutes afterwards to the public because, trust me, they know how to get in touch with us, and they're going to call us, and they're going to email us. And we can't do that with every vote. And we give them that time. We don't even have to have that time in there, but we give them that time to speak for on nothing on our agenda at the end, over and beyond the time that we're going to give them potentially on a specific agenda item. So I'm all for that. More speech, the better. Mr. Susan, you had mentioned, you know what, I'm going to be twice as generous than you. I would think maybe 2 minutes at the end. I would like to give speakers more time on agenda items than non-agenda items. So to speak for 5 minutes in front of the board, you can get a lot of information out, a lot of topics out, some on the agenda item and some at the end on the non-agenda item. And I would also be for adjourning and then having our public speaker or the public comment time. I believe then when they're done, we're out of sunshine and we need to, adjourn. We're already adjourned, so we can move on. I think it's a cleaner cut, and of course I would assume we're all going to stay and stick around, But in talking to some of the boards around the state, they do that, and it's been successful. So I think that's where you see where I'm coming from. Absolutely, that is true as well, and we continue wanting to hear that.
And I think it's important that we hear from people, and I'll always be there, and I've never, but I just, my whole thing is that that non-agenda item, usually I've seen it in the past, and I'm okay to go to 2 minutes. My whole thing is that if we wanted to listen to them and stuff like that, if they can't get it out in a minute, then you can always just say, hey, I'd give you an extra time.
Right.
But if
So
somebody's
the
abusing
way
it.
this policy is written is it takes a board vote to extend
Sure.
the time, which is fine. That's the board
Well, and
needs to.
just to clarify, that extended time is not, let's vote on so this person can get extra time. That is, if we're going to say, for this meeting, we're only going to have 30 minutes, which our policy used to say only 30 minutes, then we vote to have more than 30 minutes of public comment time. That's not give this extra person. And that one I think is dangerous because even if the chair is allowed to extend, you talk about viewpoint discrimination. I want to hear more from you, Mr. So-and-so, but
That's why I'm
Mr.
taking-
So-and-so, I'm done with you. You got 3 minutes to have a so. The timer never could come fast enough. I think we're dangerous. In danger of getting in trouble for that. I think it's better for just say 3 minutes. Thank you. If they've got more to say and they didn't get it in the 3 minutes, then there are other ways to communicate.
Or whatever minutes, yeah.
Yeah. Were you
Okay.
done?
Yeah, I was done. You can,
Okay.
you said you're going to circle back
I
on.
wanted to address the adjourning thing, and clearly we're kind of split on this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually haven't addressed this one yet. I don't think Mr. Thomas or Ms. Wright have either. When we had that vote last week, or last meeting, and put forward the motions about splitting back up and turning the cameras off, my expectation, this is not what happened, and it happened so fast, I didn't get in there fast enough. My expectation was not that we would actually adjourn the meeting before we cut the cameras off. I thought we were just going to cut the cameras off and continue on. So we need to make a decision. Somebody made the point in that once we adjourn the meeting, that the rules don't apply because the meeting's not on. But here's the thing. I'm not comfortable with sitting here and say, well, we know we're all going to stay. I feel like, not because the rules won't apply, but, and not to make everybody sit here, but the meeting is still going on. And the danger we ran into at the end of that meeting was, the meeting was adjourned, so sunshine no longer applied, so we really shouldn't have had any other conversation. Now, in truth, and board will have to police ourselves on this, but, and the chair will have to help police, whoever the chair is at the time, but we really, at that point, shouldn't be directing the superintendent to do anything or making decisions. We certainly shouldn't be voting on things that are that late in the game. And I think our policy even says, and has always said, anything that comes before, it would be put on a later meeting. So, but I do think we should still do it. There's one little part in here though that says, so my input would be not to adjourn the meeting, but just turn the cameras off, have the meeting, and then when the last person's done, the chair says, the meeting is adjourned, unless, superintendent thinks of something really quick that he forgot to tell us. Not hard, fast rules, but we certainly shouldn't be deliberating at that point in the meeting. There is a place that says, at the end of a small letter I, the board will return on camera to adjourn the meeting. I don't think we need that. I had that conversation with you, Paul. I think we can just adjourn the meeting off camera. There's no reason why to keep the YouTube video on pause for 45 minutes for people to sit there and wait till we come on and say the meeting's adjourned. So I don't think we need. I think we need to adjourn it after the last public comment. I am not in favor of the 1 minute for non-agenda. We just had this conversation where we give people more opportunities by allowing agenda, non-agenda, whether people liked it separate before or not. When we did have it separate, it gives people more opportunity they have to share with us, which addresses, I think, what you're talking about, because when we have had that split, people took advantage of it and in a good way if they needed to and had more time to talk about different things. When we made that change, being on the board with Mr. Seuss, when we made that change back in 2021, the 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and the 1 minute at the end, besides the cameras, which we never did because of the outcry, now there's a different thing because we have all the extra complicating factors. The 3, 2, 1 was one of the most that people complained about. 1 minute, it is hard to get in there, and I think that part of our job is listening. So because of the variety of topics that people would want to talk to, I'm not in favor of restricting. I think we need to leave it at 3 minutes. It was fine last time. It'll be fine in the future. And I just circling back to FCC, it's fine if we don't put it in there because I think Paul's written some great definitions of irrelevant, of profanity, of all those things. It was just, it's not I just want to clarify, Ms. Wright, that it's not that we would need to, that we would worry about it. We do have a cable channel. That's what it applies to. It doesn't apply to YouTube. We have a cable channel, but as some people have shared with us, we're government entities, so it's not that I'm worried about us getting our hands slapped. It just was some good definitions. If we don't want to go with it, that's fine. Paul's got great definitions in there. Again, I go back to my concerns, which are the things that those definitions don't cover that would, in my mind, absolutely violate decorum, but also, because people, and to be complete, let's just put it all on the table. I don't think that people who sued us about their public comment time want the right to come in here and throw racial slurs.
Right.
If they are, they're not the people that I thought they were. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that's a First Amendment right to come in here and throw racial slurs. I don't see anything in here besides the FCC guidelines that specifically, to me, that's also abusive. But thanks to the lawsuit, we've decided, and our attorneys, not just Paul, but other attorneys, has suggested that we don't put the word abusive in there. Okay, but how are we going to have decorum? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little up, because it frustrates me. Because it's been turned into, you just want to stamp out and not let me say what I want to say. No, I want you to not stand at that podium and speak a student's name, which, by the way, let's just be clear. I'm going to go off for just a little bit, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
No.
This upsets me because due to the new rules, thanks to the 11th Circuit decision, a parent can walk into our board meeting during public comment time and say, my son's classmate, Charlie Brown, is I think he's cheating and whatever. And guess what? Now we can't stop them. So if people ever wonder why we're turning the cameras off and they're so upset, I'm sorry.
I, as a board member who has, along with my colleagues who has, while we have authority over this, I don't want to allow people to stand up there and say a student's name, a teacher's name, and they can say, oh, well, they can sue them for libel and whatever, and people can record and put out social media. Okay, but not over our YouTube channel. I don't think you need to be able to say a child's name. And the 11th Circuit doesn't allow us to prevent that. Am I correct, Mr. Gibbs?
He said personally directed.
Personally directed. So that's not just to our principals and our staff who now can get their names thrown under the bus and fine, whatever, if somebody wants to do that, it's allowed. But that also means they could say it about a student. And it could be absolutely false. So, I'm calm myself down.
Oh.
But these are the things. I don't want to allow racial slurs on our YouTube channel. I don't want to allow expletives on our YouTube channel. If somebody's reading from a book, fine, whatever, that's the law, we're going to do it. But even though we have stopped them for using expletives in reading materials, and then we didn't pull the books because we stopped them for profanity and not for sexual content. And I think we can still do that. I think Ms. Wright did a good job in those decisions as the chair. So that's where I'm going, but I don't want us to make the time shorter. I think I was clear on the other stuff, but we're going to have to make decisions on to adjourn or not to adjourn, and how much time to give the non-agenda time. And I hate that we always spend so much time talking about this dadgum policy, but not that it's not an important decision, but we need to give Paul some clarity.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I'll wait my turn if there's somebody else who wants.
No, I was just going to ask, yes, so if you would, Paul, give us some insight on adjourning or not adjourning, advantages, disadvantages.
I mean, if you want to adjourn, I'm going to have to draft some language. I did not build that into my proposal, so I'll have to draft some language on how that would work. I would likely build in the board agrees to remain in the room during the non-adjourn and provide, time for members to speak for however long you want to provide the speakers. And I would say I would add into the policy that reasonable decorum standards will still apply during the non-agenda public comment, so I can get around some of that. The problem I have is it would just be the board policy saying you agree to stay in the room. You obviously, as Ms. Campbell pointed out, couldn't discuss anything after the fact you've adjourned your meeting. So that's a problem. I did not contemplate adjourning the meeting on my proposal, so I'd want to think through some of that, but I would recommend you just cut the camera feed and then adjourn after the public comment.
And the only reason that to be honest with you, it's not that I'm trying to get it to where, because I plan on everybody knows I've always been all about people speaking, and no matter what they say, I just listen to them and let them go when I was chair. But the thing is that what I was more concerned about was the legality of showing the agenda items on camera and then not showing the non-agenda items on camera, opening us up for a discrimination or something like that, is the reason that I said if you just cut it, we listen, and then we go, that's it. I would expect the board members to make sure that they attend, but it just makes a different dynamic. If there's going to be a bunch of people that are coming in about a topic or something like that, staff might be able to go home. We can sit and listen to these people speak and then, make our judgments and go home. It's not an agenda item, so we don't have to vote to it that moment. It's not anything that's coming up. It's just that they're bringing up something in the public. My whole thing is that if we, it's one thing if we allow staff to go home during that time and we don't vote on it, we're not going to do anything, we just listen. It makes no difference for me. I don't care if we adjourn or not. It's just the fact of opening us up for the lawsuit either way was all I cared about. That's all.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sure.
So just a couple things, just to clarify my position on it. I am for adjourning the meeting after everything is done, after public comment. I'm for having the 3 minutes for both agenda items, although I want for each agenda item, but the 3 minute per speaker, and then the 3 minutes for public comment at the end for non-agenda items. And I will just remind the board, just because we're talking about the strategic plan a little while ago, and one of our objectives for community connection was to enhance our social district's reputation and appeal by building trust. And I think even if it's not used by us making the step of saying we're going to allow 3 minutes per agenda item, I'm doing a little bit of lobbying here, by the way, but that takes a step that would be unexpected in the community, that we're opening it up to be to allow more public comment. And I think that sends the right message. I don't think I just think it sends the right message to the community. I don't think it would be abused, and I think it could be beneficial. And if it got to the point where it turned out to be abused, then we can always change the policy. But anyways, I've said my piece on that one. Yeah, I just want to make sure you knew I was in favor of adjourning after everything. Legally, you're recommending that we don't have it televised or have it videotaped.
I would cut the feed before non-agenda. And again, you don't have to broadcast any part of the meeting. You just have to have minutes. So we could say we're not recording the meeting at all if you wanted to. So that's not a requirement. We choose to record and broadcast, so that's fine. But yeah, I would recommend not showing.
And what is your legal recommendation based on for shutting off the camera?
One, it's like it protects, as Ms. Campbell said, anybody that says something. You don't have to worry about it going out on our feed. If they want to record it on their phone and put it on their Facebook, that's fine. They're creating that liability, just like if they said it on camera, they're creating their liability, but it just protects the district some, and we aren't providing that forum for them to violate anybody's personal rights.
Understood. Thank you.
Dr. Rendell?
Just had a question for Paul. What if they recess the meeting at the end? When we're done with all of our business, they recess the meeting, have public comment. The meeting's still in session, or the board
It's
members
in
are bound to
session.
stay?
Right.
It's not in session, but the board members are bound to stay
Right.
because we haven't adjourned the meeting.
Right, the meeting's still pending, but you're going to be in the same boat. They aren't really in session if they've recessed, so it's just like when we recess and take a break here, you're not supposed to conduct business during that time, so they would still be bound by that. I think if they just put this note up saying, or at the end of the meeting, they would just cut the feed, and I don't know how that would look on camera if it just goes black, because we're letting staff go at that point, so they don't have to sit around for an hour and listen to public comment before we adjourn. That's something the board would have to decide if, are we going back on camera or not going back on camera to adjourn? If we're going back on camera to adjourn, then it would just say board is taking public comment, and that's what I've seen other districts do.
Right.
They don't show any public comment. They just say taking public comment, and then when public comment's over, the feed comes back on.
I
Should address your
just didn't
concern
want
about worrying about law.
I like that idea. Plus, you can tell staff they can go home and then
Yeah, and Dr. Rendell can let staff, when we finish the agenda part and we get to non-agenda public comment, staff's free to leave at that point if he wants to let his staff go.
I'm going to
let's
tell you
go
where I'm going
around.
to land on my vote. This is
Go
where I'm
ahead.
at with this. So I'm in favor of splitting the comment agenda versus non-agenda and moving non-agenda to the end of the meeting and not televising. I think we should give the opportunity for 3 minutes for agenda and 3 minutes for non-agenda, so they have the opportunity to actually speak more to us than they normally would. That would give them 6 minutes total in case they wanted to address other things. I don't think we should adjourn the meeting until after the public comments are done, just for the legality purposes of us. I think it'd be very easy to violate sunshine because we've now adjourned a meeting and we're still here. And what happens if we say something that we're going to vote on? Yeah, I think it just gets us into the weeds that we could potentially really get in some trouble. So that's kind of where I land on it. And I would opt to remove the FCC portion of it just because unfortunately, fortunately, the only mouth that we're responsible for and what comes out of it is our own. And so we can't stop someone from saying things that we don't like, as much as I don't like that, and I wish everyone would hold decorum and hold themselves in a respectful manner. It's not our job to necessarily police it. It's our job to listen and be responsive as the government agency that we are, but they get to say what they want. That's the freedom of speech that is a blessing for our nation that a lot of countries don't have that. So that's where I land on all of these things.
If you're irrelevant, if you're using profanity. I mean, the chair is policing those things. That's what the whole policy is about. Within reason. Reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to clarify, just the 3 minutes total for the agenda items, not 3 on each. And then 3 additional minutes at the end for non-agenda. So if there's something they want to talk to us about that's not on this agenda, they can bring it up when the cameras are off in case there's something that comes out that maybe isn't so nice, so.
Paul, is there a way to, it looks like there's a definite 3 minute, you know what I mean, these kind of things. My only concern was to make sure that legally we're okay. Is there a way that the chair can recess the meeting for a second, let staff go home, get reset it, then open it back up without the cameras on and run it?
Yeah,
Would
I
that
mean,
give us a better legal perspective?
Yeah, the question is going to be, does the board want to come back on camera to adjourn?
No.
So, I mean, if you're at that point, I would say you would probably take a recess. Like, we're going to take a 5-minute convenience break at the
everybody
end of the
go.
meeting. They can shut down in there. We're going to, before we go into non-agenda public comment, staff, if the superintendent wants to let them go and they want to leave, can leave. A lot of times during that non-agenda public comment, somebody may say something that, you know, the superintendent wants to say, hey, can you go talk to so-and-so in the back and tell them the details so they can be addressed at that point by the appropriate staff members.
Right.
I don't think we need to write that into policy,
No.
a break, because if we have a super short meeting and we've got one non-agenda person waiting to talk, I don't want to take a recess. Let's just hear him
Sure.
and go home.
No, as long as we're, look at, like, I don't, you know me, I'm not ever going to shy away from having people speak. So if it's okay that we can do all of what we just said, then we're good. I think that but if there is going to be a series of people that are there, we can say, hey, we'll just take a recess, let everybody go home, and then we'll come back and we'll, you know, listen to everybody speak. Yeah.
Well, isn't it the fact that we're kind of taking a recess is because we're cutting the camera? So we would still cut the cameras with one person. So we would still, our meeting would look the same. And they just would not see that at the very end because we'll do it off camera.
He is right.
Whatever might be.
Mhm.
Whether we need to write it in.
I mean, we're going to end our video part of the meeting the same every time. Yeah.
I didn't hear, is everybody okay with having them fill out the agenda, non-agenda, start time
Yeah,
at public comment? Just make sure we're all okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
So-
And we already had that in there somewhere.
Yeah.
It is. It's
When
just-
we had
it's
it.
under
Do you give
checks.
guidance for this evening's meeting on what the chair should do?
Yeah, obviously, if you're going to split comment, you have to have a motion. So because currently the policy is it all goes at the same time. So if the goal is we're going to split it and kind of implement this tonight, you're going to need a motion specifically laying that out, saying, right.
Is that at the beginning or right before the public
I
comment?
believe you guys adjourned the last time, so you would
No,
want
we
to,
didn't vote on
you'd want to say, hey, we're going to, the motion would be something along the lines of, I move to split public comment between agenda and non-agenda, providing 3 minutes to each, with non-agenda occurring after the business portion of the meeting off camera.
Sure.
And then we will.
Right, and followed by the adjournment. And if you're going to
Okay.
adjourn off camera, you can put that in there
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
All right, then we
All
can
right,
just
so
leave
you're
that.
good, then I'm good. Yes, it looks like we've got approval or board direction to give the public 100% more speaking time at our board meetings. So it sounds, it's exactly that, and happy to have that. I too then agree with the direction of splitting the time, handling it away, and we'll just adjourn afterwards off camera. So it looks like we have clear direction.
All right, and FCC regs in or out?
Out's fine.
Out, all right.
All right,
So we're moving, right?
our next one.
Okay.
Ms. Rutledge.
No, I need some, are we going to say each individual policy, or are we going to say, are we introducing each individual policy? Dr. Rendell, what do you think?
I can
You got it?
I can try and do it, yeah.
You got it.
241 is the next policy, it's just a slight change to CTE, really as a result of Neola recommendations.
And most of these are all Neola recommendations, so if you just want to say, does anybody have any comments about the rest of them, we can take it that way too.
That's kind of how I thought, so.
I
After-
didn't have
Do we want to do
anything on
that right
this
now?
Unless staff has something specific.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Not for this one, it's very minor change, just that the superintendent would submit
Right.
for board approval and legislative updates.
Yep.
And that's state law, right?
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, so I have no problem saying, does any board member have any further topics they want to discuss on these? On any of them?
Hang on, let me look.
You do, Paul?
I made
Because I
some
thought they were
notes,
just
but-
update when I read
Yeah,
through them.
for the most part, staff's just recommending Neola changes because Neola updated.
I had a question about the leave of absence one.
Which one
And-
is
So we'll have Mr. Dufresne make his way up here at some
3120,
point.
or no, 3430.
Yeah, which one?
And it's just follow up with information. It's 3430.
3430, yes.
3430. I can't remember, I mean, I guess this is our policy with adjustments, but we have, there was, and maybe it's because it's in the leave, what do they call that? We have a book that has all the rules.
Right, the leave of absent guidebook.
Oh, the
or something.
guidebook, it's
Yeah.
right here.
Yep.
Sorry, it's right. But I'm not seeing the 2 years in here, because currently we have that, that's the max amount of time you can take leave. And even though I think we have some ways around it, like, for example, the BFT officers have taken longer than 2 years. So I'm not really sure how that works, but is that is also in the leave guidebook, so it's not necessarily in the policy?
So a year, I'm sorry, I was dealing with
That's
something
that's
different.
okay. I didn't mean to
That's quite all right.
pull you away.
So we're looking at
just-
3430. One of the questions Mrs.
Yeah,
Campbell had is the
questions-
2-year thing. I think that's actually in contract, right? That's not in policy.
About just the maximum amount of time you can take is of leave is
It's
2
a,
years.
it's a 1-year leave with an option for 2, and that
Okay.
is in the, not policy, but the board
In the guidebook?
guidebook, yes.
Okay, so all that's there. Are these highlights, these new materials, is this all Neola updates, or some of these came from?
Neola updates.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, good, that was it, that's all. Thank you. Sorry to
Oh, sorry.
make you run.
Just wanted to make you come in here.
I didn't have any on the next one. 5112. Oh, I had one on this. I had a question on this, the next policy, which is 5121, our open enrollment, controlled open enrollment policy. Couple things. So on the second page of this policy, we cap them at 95%. Is the microphone on? Okay, right. We cap them at 95% for allowing them to take transfers in. Would the board have any appetite for increasing that percentage? I know that that's kind of, ideally, I mean, if a school is at 98%, that means they still have 2% more capacity that they could take on. So if a student were wanting to change or transfer to that school, and we see them hit at 95, and we could, potentially some schools might throw a roadblock up and say, nope, we're at 95, we're not doing it anymore, because we've hit capacity. So my thought was, will we entertain the idea of increasing the capacity, or is there any reason maybe that I'm not thinking of that we wouldn't want to increase the capacity from 95 to a number that's closer to 100, so we could permit flexibility for students to be able to move or transfer to schools?
Dr. Engdahl?
Yeah, basically the 95% is so that we don't then over-enroll. Like when you have students then move in to the zone school, and so they're guaranteed a seat
Right.
in that school. At some point, you might you might increase over class size. There's that 95% cap is so that we don't end up over-enrolled.
The other thing is that if you ELO into a school, then unless you violate the conditions of your ELO with behavior, attendance, and things like that, you're pretty much guaranteed a renewal every year. So let me just give you a scenario. Westside Elementary, which we just talked about the last meeting, is bursting at the seams. Any family that ELO'd for their child to be there starting in kindergarten, they're not zoned for Westside, they're zoned for, let's say, Columbia, they zone in for Westside, we have to keep them at Westside, even though now Westside's over 100%. And so they may not be, they weren't at 100% when the kid, and this, I say this because of this actually a real example from last year. We have to keep those kids in that school, and potentially, because we have sibling preference, then all of their family into a school that is now not just nearing capacity, but now over capacity. So it's not always going to happen, but I want to say there's something in the policy that allows the superintendent some flexibility.
It does. Well, they could freeze a school, so that's.
Right.
Capacity is defined, all right.
So the overclass size concern is really primarily for elementary. When you get into the secondary, what you could be doing is creating a situation where a zone student doesn't have access to courses because the non-zone students have filled all those seats.
Okay.
Certain electives, things like that. And so I think it's a way of trying to save those last few seats for zone students if they arrive after the year starts.
And again, my only thought on this, like I said, is that this could be utilized as a tool to stop someone from being able to transfer into a school where there is actual room for capacity, because they might one day have a capacity issue. I mean, to me, obviously you want to utilize 100% capacity of all of our schools. That would be ideal. And especially if it were a student that maybe was coming from, looking at like a charter school, for instance, say they were transferring from charter or homeschool or private school. I would hate that to be a roadblock.
I just wanted to add that we do consult before a school. So yes, we look at the 95, but we also consult with several members of cabinet before freezing a school to look at things like, is this a school that's in an area where we know there are several neighborhoods that are in process, where we're going to keep adding students, versus a frozen school that may be in a more stable community, like there's not new growth, they're just full. And then in that case, when we have conversations, we have conversations around, are we putting them on the frozen list just on their percentage? Or, and that's where we're trying to be more cautious with, especially in areas like the South or here in Vieira, is, just looking at potential growth throughout the year. Because like West Side, for example, zone students are coming every day. And, but that would be different than a school maybe in an area where there's not a lot of new growth, but they're sitting at 95, we might not necessarily freeze them. So just their percentage alone, we're not automatically freezing them. That is the number that we target that we could freeze them, but we also look at, is there growth or not in that community that could potentially make over class size or courses not available to zone students.
Okay, and all of our choice schools are 100%, correct? Like those ones, we are never stopping those ones at 95, correct?
We do hold, and Dr. Mary, you want to come up? We do have to hold a percent for military. And something to consider is, while we are not really changing the definition of what the military child is, under Purple Star District status, we hold a percent of seats for not only active, but also military veterans.
Okay. All right, which is good. I support that 100%. One of the other things I thought about, again, because we're in a competitive market, right, for education. That we absolutely are competing with charters, with private, with homeschool. The lottery system that we have for some of our schools, would this be, and I'm just throwing this out there, this could be a horrible idea. It could be not a horrible idea. I don't know. But we have this tier system for the lottery. But what if we added a tier for a student who was coming to us from a private school, homeschool, charter school? So it gives them not necessarily if they're going to leave that school and come back into our schools, which is what we want them in our schools, right? We want them to be educated at BPS. Would that be something that maybe would be beneficial to the board, to the district as a whole?
An old-timey phrase comes to mind about dance with the date that brung ya. I think I butchered that, but it's something along those lines.
Dance with the date that brung ya.
I think we attract people by having excellent programs that they can't get anywhere else. I hate the idea of giving an advantage over just people who have been going through the process all along, because then maybe that family goes, well, fine then. I don't think you're solving a problem. I think you might be creating.
I know. Well, that's kind of what I was thinking. I thought those same things through, but I was just thinking also, hey, if it was a tool that we could use to attract back, maybe it'd be beneficial.
They could use it as a tool to leave and then come back.
Yeah, that's true too. So okay, never mind. Scratch that one. Horrible idea. Thank you.
No, that's why we're here.
Okay. All right. I think that's all.
Sometimes you have to say it out loud before you.
What's that?
Sometimes you have to say it out loud.
Sometimes you got to talk it through and just exactly. That's all I had on this policy.
Yes, trust me on that one.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Glad we had this conversation.
Anyone else?
Oh, sorry.
Oh?
Sorry, I needed I got stuck on that one. I was scrolling down to see if there was one.
Okay.
No, I thought we'd already fixed the holiday, the religious holiday one, when we did our whole, that we had taken out all those.
We've done it before, but it keeps changing. What can I
Oh,
say?
okay. Okay.
Neil, what do you mean it keeps Neil?
Oh, we
Neola
added
keeps
extra,
making,
and now
making
Neola's
changes.
saying keep the list in the superintendent's office, because as it
Correct.
changes, we
Yes.
don't have to change the policy every
Yep.
single time. Okay.
That's why it was originally, staff chose to not have the list because they didn't want to be responsible for going through, we decided these are our holidays, but not these. So, yeah, we're wanting to remove the list so that if you have a, held religion and you have a holiday, then staff can decide whether it's a legitimate holiday or just say, hey, you saying it's a holiday, a religious holiday, we're going to let you out.
Right, and sorry, I know we're pushing to the time, but there were a couple things. Corporal punishment policy is on here, and I would like to
It
know
is.
why, because there's no edits. Is it just adding those legal
The
things?
statutes.
There's a statute
Yeah,
reference
statute
that was
change, yeah.
changed.
Okay, okay,
Just reminding
stirring it
us.
up for no good reason.
Oh, I had an issue with the next one, the 5771. Letter D. I am not comfortable with this. I believe that anytime that we are searching
you're
a
right.
student,
I did too.
that we need to make sure that it is, the person conducting the search is the gender of the student. So I know that may not always be the easiest solution, but I really feel adamant that we need to not say if available. I think it needs to be, no, we have to have.
Here comes Ms. Dampier.
Okay, Ms. Dampier's coming up.
Thank you, I heard that.
I'm thinking about elementary school, but it
This
doesn't have
was,
anything
this
else.
was an issue mainly at our elementary schools, so that's why we're, if available. The first, when we put in procedures, the procedures would be that the gender of, that they identify with, but if it's not available, they were asking and calling, what do we do? What do we do for our elementary school? So this gives us a little flexibility that they're going to try. The first thing would be for them to have the person that was their gender, but if not available,
You
then
mentioned gender they identify with or their gender?
their
No,
gender.
no, their
gender,
gender
yeah.
assigned
Their
at birth.
gender, sorry.
Because if you have an elementary school that has all female,
And that's-
female administrators, which is frequently, and all female staff, except for maybe, then you're going to ask a teacher who wasn't trained in any of those things to do a search.
Or what we were doing was pulling someone from another school, and it just wasn't conducive to.
Yeah, they're actually having to wait till a staff member from another
Yes.
school came.
And that's not timely.
That's not ideal
first
either,
goal.
so.
And
all right.
let me clarify, it has to be in the presence, do you have to have two staff members when you're
Correct.
Yes.
doing that?
So there has to be one that is.
So there's some
that is,
protections there.
The protection is that there's two adults in the room.
Right.
Right,
They
two
may
adults.
not be of the gender of the student.
Right. Okay. And that would be the other thing. Maybe you have one person on campus who can do it, but if you have to have two, and that campus doesn't have two males who are trained and qualified to do that
Then-
yet, then
okay.
we come into
And
problem.
It just
keep in
tied-
mind that a few years ago, we didn't have this
We didn't.
policy, this requirement at all.
It's changed last year.
Which I'm glad for it, for obvious reasons.
Yes.
but-
Sure.
Yes.
But it was
All
just
right.
very difficult.
The final policy, super excited about. Ms. Harris had a conversation about PEP. We're finally getting, and it's for you, if you guys aren't aware, Brevard Virtual now is available on the marketplace for families who are utilizing the PEP scholarship. And Ms. Harris and her department and Dr. Meyer are trying to get us on the road to having our schools, so that kids can use their PE scholarship to come take a class on campus.
Yes.
It's just a slow road, and that's not all our fault. So the policy that we have here, I know you guys have further meetings going on, so do you feel like this policy, as given by Neola, meets the needs that you anticipate coming without having to do any changes after you meet this week?
We actually just met yesterday or today. I can't remember when we met, but it was either I think it was yesterday.
Yesterday.
And some clarity that I just feel like we are good with this policy, but when you get to PEP student participation in certain district activities, based on our pilot with Brevard Virtual, this cannot lie at the school level. And so I want clarity around, we do not have a PEP staff. We are working with finance, this will be something that will get very big very quickly, but looking at other districts and what they're trying to roll out, everybody's trying to roll this out. I just wanted clarity that A through F will not be like August. We won't be able to offer all of those courses.
Okay.
And so I just wanted clarity is this will be a great opportunity for Brevard, and I think it will be very attractive to families. But in looking at, we're going to have to go slow to go fast on this, just because if we do this and it's not smooth, it will be a detractor. We
Yeah.
want this to be an attractor, and I think it's important that we do it strategic and looking at Some districts are just going with core. That's not where we're going to like attract.
Right.
People aren't going to
Right.
call us and say, I want to take the fourth grade math class. What I do think will be very attractive is elementary music. I think
Yeah.
some of those
Yep.
pieces. And so I just want a clarity around A through F that this will not be, if we put it in
Policy's
policy.
done, we're running with it.
Yes, that we'll
Right.
be able to deliver
So
on that.
I, for one, am in favor of, like, for example, interscholastic extracurricular student activities. If we haven't figured out what that cost is going to be, because the state is not giving us any guidance on how much any of this, how much to charge for any of this, if we haven't figured out, we don't roll it out until we do. There are opportunities for them to dual enrollment other ways with the scholarship, is my understanding, because they could do it directly with the college, I thought. District virtual instruction, we already have that going, at least started off. Yeah, I mean, whatever we can do, whatever you guys determine is the proper, because there are some courses that cost us more money. You know, if a kid is in art or even their science classes, we give, because the board approves it, you know, what, $1.80 per student for art supplies or whatever. Well, that needs to come from the scholarship. So maybe it costs a little bit more than taking a regular class for them to take anything that has an extra fee or whatever. So whatever you guys are, I'm ready for us to go. I've been ready for us to go. I know it's not your fault that we're not going yet, but I'm fine with, let's put it in here, but only roll out what we're ready to do.
We now have, our committee is meeting weekly at this point, so this will, we do 100% plan to roll it out, but with some parameters, just from learning again with our BVS pilot, is families can be awarded the scholarship, but they have not been funded.
Right.
And what happens is if we take those students and then when the funding comes in, they don't pay the bill, we have no recourse to that. So we're looking at just other districts. We're all creating contracts at this time of what the agreements will be and things around funding, because we definitely don't want to have students come in, you know, if they haven't been funded, then they're getting the FTE, we're not, and we're providing the service. So
Well,
just looking at a lot of those kind of stickier
When I-
It seems like they should almost pay for the course upon enrollment, not completion,
That's what
right?
that's what we're wanting to do. We want to do that because different than the BVS setting, if they drop out of a course or stop showing up, no harm, no foul, they can take larger numbers. Whereas for us, they could be potentially in a CTE course taking a student from
Right.
Taking a spot.
Taking
Yes,
a seat that we couldn't, yeah.
Right. The only other thing that I just wanted to mention is under contracting, the course participation. That's just when we get into this fee payment. This is written vague enough, but once we move forward, we will bring what our contract will look like and some pricing at both the elementary level and the secondary level. But when we speak of like these acceleration courses, if we want to go into offering seats potentially in IB or ACE, we will also be calculating into that price the amount, the bonus FTE that we don't get for a teacher saying, student, you're going to have to pay for the assessment. And then also we're going to have to charge for the bonus the teacher could earn should they pass that test as part of that.
Yeah, and those are, so when I met with, when I had my homeschool meetings back in October, this was a lot of the conversation. This was the main drive. And they brought up the same thing. And one of them had suggested, look, just like if we don't pay, because I mentioned that same thing, if they said they don't pay, they're not going to not try to come back to the school district. They will pay eventually. So maybe they just get put on a list that says they didn't pay until they do. They can't come back and register for
Or they
classes.
can't take the test.
Because, well, right, but the thing is that there's an opportunity there overall. So if that happens, you can just put them on a list of can't register for another course until they do it. But I will tell you that this is one of the biggest opportunities we have. When I met, there was teachers that were there that I had recognized from when I taught who had students with special needs that wanted them to learn a certain way at home, but then also provide opportunities for their kids. When I was a coach, I used to pull the homeschool list in the area around me and have the homeschool kids come and play sports with our teams. Like we are one Brevard, we're here together, and I think that this is a good step. One of the ways we can calculate, Ms. Campbell, if we don't have to wait for the state to give it to us, I don't think, but we can calculate our own calculation, correct? So you can calculate how much it costs for the class. Like an automotive class, there's money that comes in from capital and everything else that we may want to just add a little bit, right? There's costs inside there that we can calculate pretty quickly to figure out how much that course truly costs. That
And we're not
person.
waiting for the state. The state's not giving
Correct.
us,
No,
there
they're
is
not
no
gonna give you
guidelines.
that.
We're
We'll be
working
waiting a
very
long
closely
time.
with finance
I just didn't want,
on
I
this.
just, it's
Yeah.
not hard to put
The
together that.
pricing won't be the holdup. What
Right.
we have to create systems just because we had an example at BVS where a clerk was looking in and said, oh, this is a homeschooler, and went in to fix, because, normally they're reviewing that data. That's so important because a PEP student, might look like a homeschooler, but if we mess that up and we change them to a traditional
Then they
homeschooler,
lose their
we've now cost that family the
Yeah.
scholarship forever, and that would be on us with no way to recoup. So we just want to make sure we have very tight systems.
I think one of the other things that people don't know is that the amount of teachers that are homeschool parents now, we will also use with retention and recruitment, because some of those parents will bring them back. Many of them make the teetering decision right on elementary to go into high school, and a lot of them recently and in the recent past have decided to keep their kid in homeschool. I think by opening this door will allow us to not only help with students coming in, but then also, we would also see a lot of our former teachers who left the profession to come back because their kids are in the schools. So I think it's great. The time I spent with those homeschooler families were amazing. That's it. Thank you.
All right.
Anything else, guys? All right. There's no further business. This meeting is adjourned.